Chapter 965. In addition, there was a ban in Chang'an. After pondering for a while, Zhang Feng was really frightened. He hurriedly said, "Old master, tell me, what should we do about this?" Li Yuan was delighted. But he still said calmly, "In fact, it's very simple, but I really don't know where the selling point of this cigarette is. You first tell me, what are you going to do with so many tobacco leaves? Do you still need to ask? Isn't this to make cigarettes?" Zhang Feng did not finish his words and hurriedly shut up, but it was too late. Li Yuan had already gotten what he wanted. He smiled and patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and said, "Yes. You made this thing to sell, so this is business. But now in Chang'an, you don't have to think about it. You will definitely be targeted. Then we have to think of a foolproof plan. You don't have to think about Shaoshan. It's not safe to set up a tobacco factory there. You said you opened an academy. What will others think if you do so many side businesses? Even if you really want to do side businesses, you have to find a place where no one is. Making a fortune in silence is also the way of the king. Otherwise, if you do it so ostentatiously, it will inevitably arouse the disgust of those ministers. At that time, don't say who you have a good relationship with, those people want to mess with you. Even the Lord Zhangsun can't wait by your side all day long. Don't you think this makes sense?" Well, Zhang Feng was really stunned. The current situation was unclear, and someone was secretly messing with him. For the time being, he did not know who was doing this. Even if he knew, he could not do anything. Seeing Zhang Feng's situation, Li Yuan struck while the iron was hot and said, "You see, the autumn rain is about to fall. When the weather is wet, these tobacco leaves will be damp after all. Once they are damp, do you think the taste of the tobacco will change? So, I think, with so many tobacco leaves, with your current manpower, even if you don't eat or sleep to make it, you can't finish it in a year. But there is such a big piece of meat in Chang'an City. Do you want to let it rot and not let these people eat it?" "Stop!" Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted to stop. "If I let the old man continue, would he ask me to commit suicide to atone for my sins?" Zhang Feng speechlessly wiped the cold sweat and saliva off his face. He leaned back quietly and said, "Old master, if you have something to say, we can talk about it properly. If you want to put the tobacco factory in Luozhou, then let it be in Luozhou. You have the final say, okay? As long as we split the profits 50-50, you can do whatever you want with the rest." When Li Yuan heard this, he smacked his lips in satisfaction. He deliberately took out Zhang Feng's flask from his bosom and drank a mouthful of wine in front of Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng gritted his teeth. But there was nothing he could do. After all, he didn't like to use things that had been used by others. At this time, after the matter was finalized, Li Yuan said earnestly, "Boy, don't think that you have suffered a loss. You should know that what I brought down for you is endless trouble. You should prepare for your mid-autumn hunt with peace of mind. That is the big thing. As long as this matter is done, then everything will be fine, you know." When it came to business, Li Yuan couldn't help but worry. "Boy, do you have confidence in this mid-autumn hunt? If it's really not possible, I'll find some connections for you." This mid-autumn hunt, he really couldn't help much. After all, there were some things that he could use the retired emperor, and even Li Shimin could use his connections. But this mid-autumn hunt and this mid-autumn poetry meet, they really couldn't intervene. At most, they could strictly guard against accidents. The key was still to see the strength of this mid-autumn hunt. To put it bluntly, if you didn't have the strength to prove your existence, even if you had more people to help, it would be useless. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "No need. If I can't even handle this matter, then wouldn't I, Zhang Feng, be too useless? Even if I become the champion of this mid-autumn hunt, what's the use? Zhang Feng, really don't care about this. Li Yuan smacked his lips and didn't say anything. He just gave a thumbs up. Then I'll wait here for the sound of your triumphant return. By the way, I heard this morning that your basketball was rejected. Are you sure you don't need me to use my connections? This matter was obviously targeted by someone. Otherwise, how could those people still make such a conclusion when they knew the magic of this basketball? The emergence of every new thing was bound to have endless people who wanted to drown this thing in the world of mortals. The emergence of a thing was bound to affect the interests of a large number of people. This was the situation of basketball at this time. If he wanted to push it, he had to defeat those who pushed and dragged it, and not let it appear. Looking at Li Yuan, Zhang Feng wanted to say his thoughts, but he felt that it would be endless. It was like a chicken talking to a duck. Zhang Feng was too lazy to say anything. It wouldn't be too late to talk about other things after the rugby ball and the jersey appeared. Otherwise, he would be the one to suffer in this mid-autumn hunt. After all, the matter of the academy had caused an uproar. There were imperial edicts, and so on. If at this time, he couldn't get the first place in this mid-autumn hunt, it would be too embarrassing. Chapter 966. 5:00. The sun was slowly moving to the west. The sun after autumn was called the 24 Tigers of Autumn at this time. Its power was simply incredible. At night, it was so cold that one couldn't wait to put on a jacket. But at noon, one couldn't wait to strip off everything on one's body. Zhang Feng hated sitting in a sedan chair. Although it could avoid the glaring sun, it also made him lose a lot of interest. For example, watching the people running on the basketball court on the street. For example, the strange food on the street that was tempting. Every time, even if he looked at it for a long time, his mood would be different, and the things he saw would be even more different. On the sedan chair, Zhang Feng was holding a rugby ball in his arms. Wearing sunglasses, he looked here and there. There was a gentle smile on his face, which charmed the young girls on the street and made them scream. At this time, when the sedan chair had just arrived at the city gate, a familiar sedan chair appeared in front of Zhang Feng. And there seemed to be some dispute at the city gate in front of him. At this time, the city gate was blocked. Zhang Feng was too lazy to pay attention to it. He played with the rugby ball while chatting with the people on the street. Occasionally, he would recite a poem. Instantly, the people who were still waiting in line to leave the city burst into a burst of exclamations. The noise here made the city gate guard angry. He knocked on the Modeo a few times and roared, "What are you all arguing about? Do you still want to leave the city? If you don't, get the F***ck out of the city." The guard's angry roar came to an abrupt end the moment he saw Zhang Feng. Then, like a dog, he hurriedly grinned and said, "Yo! Isn't this Prince Zhang? Are you going out of the city? Come, the people in front, make way. Make way for Prince Zhang. Prince Zhang." The people at the city gate were shocked. And the beauty sitting in the sedan chair trembled all over. At this time, in the midst of the commotion at the city gate, Zhang Feng couldn't help but put down his legs and sit up straight. He recognized it. Wasn't this the sedan chair that Yu often rode when she went to find him? Could it be? He suddenly thought of what Yu had said last night, and his heart ached. Was she really going back to Jiangnan? Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little anxious. However, there were too many people here. He really couldn't ask Yu here. He could only helplessly urge the sedan bearers to quickly leave the city. When they passed by Yu sedan, Zhang Feng and Yu, who was in the sedan, were unusually nervous. It was as if they had been caught having an affair. But in the end, Zhang Feng was still defeated by reason. He sighed and walked out of the city gate. Once he was out of the city, Zhang Feng looked at the fork in the road and asked, "Which road leads to Jiangnan?" The sedan bearer was stunned when he heard this. His eyes rolled as he said, "If you want to wait for someone, the Wei River is a good place. Why don't I stop there for you? Once you're done, I'll pick you up." As a palanquin bearers who often worked at Shao Mountain, how could they not know about the affairs of this esteemed dean? As for other things, they might not know or recognize them. They might not know about fine porcelain and the like, and they might not even know how to read big words. However, they could tell you all day about the types of palanquins and carriages they were familiar with. At this time, even if Zhang Feng didn't say anything, they all knew what Zhang Feng wanted to do. After all, they had seen Yuqiyu come and go in this sedan chair in front of the tavern in Tonghui Lane. Now that they saw Prince Zhang's expression, who didn't know what was going on? Zhang Feng couldn't help but blush when he heard this, tacitly agreeing with their words. After the Wei River stopped, Zhang Feng gave each of them a banknote. After the four left, he seriously looked at the Wei River in front of him. This was the historical location of the Wei River Alliance. Although more than a year had passed on the wooden bridge that could accommodate 3 carriages side by side, the scars left behind by hatchets still served as a reminder of the pain and suffering in his heart. The turbid water beneath the bridge was mixed with tree branches that had been washed down from the depths of the Qinling Mountains. At this time, a faint fragrance caused Zhang Feng to turn around. But in the next moment, he couldn't help but fall into a daze. Behind him was the silhouette of the Qinling Mountains and Shao Mountain. Yuqiyu was wearing a pink muslin dress, her beautiful face tinged with sorrow. In his infatuation, Zhang Feng felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly hammered. "You're here?" Zhang Feng asked in a daze. Yuqiyu on the other hand, smiled faintly. 2 drops of sparkling and translucent tears fell from her drooping eyes onto the bridge under Zhang Feng's feet. Yuqiyu held back her tears. When she raised her head, although her eyes were still red, they had long since disappeared. "The wind is so strong today." Yuqiyu smiled and couldn't stop crying again. Zhang Feng's heart ached. He reached out to hug her, but Yuqiyu stubbornly took a step back and said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, please conduct yourself with dignity." Zhang Feng smacked his lips and sighed. Yuqiyu was right. What was he now? Was he her husband? Or what? He was nothing. What right did he have to hug her? Zhang Feng bitterly smiled, then he withdrew his hand and said, "Can you not go? Old Master Li and the others here are no longer against you. You. No need. Chang'an isn't suitable for me. I'm a little tired. I want to go back and rest. I want to think about what happened during this period. When I've thought things through, or when you have a home of your own, you can come and fetch me on a palanquin." Chapter 967. Yuqiyu still left. Zhang Feng was a little disappointed. He didn't want the first woman of the Tang Dynasty to get involved in his affairs. Yu was very smart. She should have known that he had met those nobles and the current crisis. She was also anxious because he had asked her to help him find out if there was any connection between the nobles in Jiangnan and the nobles in Shandong. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left so quietly without even giving him a hug. Zhang Feng stood on the bridge for a long time with a little heartache. The sun, from its dazzling color, hung over the top of the mountain and slowly set at the end of the Wei River between Mount Shao and Qinling. Only an incomparably gorgeous afterglow was left. "Young Master Zhang, shouldn't we go back?" At this time, the sedan bearer seemed to be impatient and came forward to ask hesitantly. Zhang Feng sighed and threw the cigarette butt in his hand into the Wei River. Finally, he took a look at Yu, who had disappeared into the boundless fog, and said lightly, "Wait for me." After I destroy the 5 families and 7 kingdoms, after I destroy these big families, Zhang Feng, swear to give you the most glorious wedding in the Tang Dynasty. While Zhang Feng was murmuring in a low voice, Yu Qigong came over helplessly and stood beside Zhang Feng. After waving his hand to let the sedan bearer leave, he handed a cigarette to Zhang Feng and said, "Let's go. It's getting late. Do you think it's dangerous for her to go back this time?" Looking at Zhang Feng's back, Yu Qigong wanted to pat him on the shoulder, but this guy couldn't take a beating. He could only sigh and say, "No. After all, my cousin's family has some prestige in Jiangnan. I've found dozens of retired soldiers and sent them to her. You don't have to worry about her safety. Lao Li and the others have already arranged it. But since you don't want her to go, why don't you let her stay?" Zhang Feng smiled bitterly and patted Yu Qigong's shoulder. "Thanks, old Yu." As he slowly walked towards Yu Qigong's sedan, Zhang Feng said calmly, "There are many choices in a person's life. Some people choose to live peacefully, while others choose to protect. Let's go, old Yu. I respect her choice. I also believe that distance is not a problem. I understand her, and she understands me." Yu Qigong looked at Zhang Feng's back with a wry smile. He really couldn't understand how someone who liked to talk so much could attract so many women. At first, he was worried that Yu Qiyu would lead Zhang Feng into a ditch. But now, it seemed that he was wrong. The emperor was wrong. The retired emperor was wrong. Everyone was wrong. Zhang Feng was simply a freak. As long as everyone was attracted by him, they would be unable to extricate themselves from being attracted to him. Even Yu Jiangnan's Yu Qi Mei was subdued by him. How could he not see that Yu Qiyu had already lost her virginity? Jiangnan had never lacked handsome men, nor did it lack those who were brimming with talent. At the very least, they looked more outstanding than Zhang Feng. However, none of these men could make Yu Qiyu lower her head. Today, she was actually willing to do so for Zhang Feng. Yu Qigong sighed and waved his hand. "Let's go. Let's go up the mountain." Yu Qigong really couldn't understand these two evildoers. Sometimes, Yu Qiyu would make Feng Zi run away. Other times, Yu Qiyu would be completely bewitched by Zhang Feng. Now, there was this hiccup. Not far away, in the darkness, Li Shimin lifted the curtains to the palanquin. After watching Zhang Feng leave, Empress Zhangsun said with reddened eyes, "Zhang Feng could have made you stay. Why did second brother stop me when I tried to persuade her to stay?" Li Shimin smiled faintly and waved his hand to indicate that they should return to the palace. "You still don't understand that kid's intentions. That kid and Yu Qiyu are both shrewd people. Which one of them is the master of saving trouble?" Yu Qiyu's return to Jiangnan must have something to do with what Zhang Feng has encountered recently. Zhang Sun Wugo was stunned. "Second brother, are you saying that you is helping Zhang Feng find out about those landowning households?" Zhang Sun Wugo couldn't help but cover her mouth. Li Shimin nodded gravely. "If they don't put on a show for others to see, how will others believe that they have broken up? In this way, the landowning households in Shandong and Jiangnan will let down their guard, and you will have more pursuers than before when she returns." So, Guanyin maid, Zhang Feng and Yu Qiyu do have feelings for each other. However, at this time, Yu Qiyu should be a little more mature. Feng Zi is still a little impulsive, but this is also good. This show will be perfect. Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wugo exclaimed, "Could it be that all of this was done by you and father?" Li Shimin nodded. "There's also Yuqi. This idea was Yuqi's. Otherwise, it's just a woman. Do you think I'm so free to stop her and Feng Zi from having a good time?" At this time, Zhang Sun Wugo finally came to her senses and exclaimed, "Could it be that Yu Qiyu or did it on purpose? Chapter 968. The next morning, Ching Chumo and the rest stood in front of Zhang Feng's wooden hut in fear, not daring to move an inch. Last night, after Zhang Feng returned to the mountain, everyone saw that his face was terrifyingly gloomy. Even Li Qingqian was scolded by Zhang Feng when he went up to ask. Then, he called everyone over and scolded them fiercely. After everyone recited the multiplication and division table and the book of songs outside his wooden hut, he asked them to scram. When he left, this fiend actually asked everyone to report at his door early in the morning, before the morning exercise. If he did not see anyone, they were to scram immediately. This time, everyone's hair stood on end. Even Qian Wanli, who had been taking care of the paper-making business, was captured. The dozen or so young men stared at each other, not knowing what was going on. In the end, they asked Yu Qigong, who only gave them a piece of advice. Do not provoke Zhang Feng. This time, everyone was restless. This morning, before the sun rose, the dozen or so people rushed into the kitchen to grab a big bowl of leftovers and rushed over. However, no one dared to be careless. Not to mention standing straight, they did not even dare to fart. This was because, according to old He from the kitchen, the light in Feng Zi's hut was on for the entire night. What did this mean? This meant that Feng Zi did not sleep for the entire night. Perhaps he was watching them through the crack of the door. And that damned Shiva was the person that everyone wanted to beat the most. If you asked him what he was, he would only say 2 words. Don't know. If you asked again, he would not even acknowledge you. Li Qingqian was so angry that he secretly kicked Xing Chumo and ordered him to beat Shiva up tonight. Just as everyone's legs turned to jelly and sweat appeared on their foreheads, the door finally opened. Once the door was opened, Zhang Feng's face was still gloomy. He stared at Shiva, who was squatting at the door, and said, "Have you prepared the armor I asked you to prepare?" "Ready. Ready." Zhang Feng nodded. "Get someone to bring it over." "Oh right, you go too." Shiva wanted to cry, but Li Qingqian and the others were roaring excitedly in their hearts. Delightful, truly delightful. Today, basketball, Chen Tinyu, Chong Zi, Idiot Wei, Yu Baolin, and Qian Wanli, you guys don't need to practice anymore. I'll teach you guys something new. As for the rest of you, I'll give you 10 days. If you can't produce the results I want before the mid-autumn hunt ends and the mid-autumn festival, I don't care who you are, all of you can scram. This time, Li Qingqian and the others exploded. They wanted to ask, but didn't dare to. His face flushed red. However, the hearts of Ching Chumo and the others sank to the bottom. They asked weakly, "Feng Zi. Cough, Dean, what about us?" He had known Zhang Feng for so long, but this was the first time he had seen Zhang Feng so angry. Li Qingqian and the others didn't know what Zhang Feng was trying to do. He asked Shiva to get the armor, and then kicked them out. This obviously didn't make sense. Zhang Feng didn't hide anything. When everyone was impatient, he said, "Do you see that thing?" When everyone heard this, they looked in the direction where Zhang Feng was pointing. They saw a flat basketball wrapped in cowhide at the entrance. Zhang Feng continued, "This thing is called a rugby ball. Don't you guys like to hit people? Okay, from today onwards, I'll join you guys. We'll practice to the death. You have to learn this thing before the mid-autumn hunt, which means in these 5 days. If you can't, the academy will be disbanded. Understand?" How could they not understand? They had to understand even if they didn't. They had no choice. If they didn't understand now, they would be courting death. As he spoke, Zhang Feng looked at the boxes of armor carried by the students. He pointed at everyone and said, "Come up, one for each of you. Put them on properly." Then, Zhang Feng rushed to the door and waved at Cripple Wang and the others who followed him up last night. Cripple Wang led his 30 or so veterans and hurriedly ran over in formation. This scene attracted the attention of all the Imperial Guards who were disguised as guards on Shao Mountain. It also made Qing Chumo, Li Qingqian, and the others feel alarmed. After all, the journey here wasn't far. In a few breaths, everyone arrived in front of Zhang Feng. Without waiting for Cripple Wang to introduce, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "You are all veterans. Naturally, you have a way to train people. Now that you've chosen to follow me, Zhang Feng, I'll give you your first task. Do you see these 5 people? I'll give you 5 days to train them." Among the 30 or so veterans, a few of them trembled when they saw Qing Chumo. Wasn't this Lieutenant Qing? How could he be a student here? And who would dare to train Lieutenant Qing? But at this moment, the matter of eating was more important. They could only pretend not to know him. One of them, a man with a scar on his face, clasped his fist and asked, "Prince Zhang, how do we train these people? If it's just basic charging and killing, we can train them for you in less than 3 days. As long as you're willing, we can guarantee that they won't die." Chapter 969. Scarface looked suspiciously at Qing Chumo when he heard that. However, after weighing his future life and the matters of the past, he nodded his head heavily. "If that's the case, then we can really train it." As he spoke, he cupped his fists towards Zhang Feng and said, "Old Go Zi, Xuanzhu, Gu Changzhang, Zhao Xizhe." Following Scarface's roar, 4 people who looked similar in age to Scarface walked out from the group of over 30 veterans. These 4 people were no different from Scarface. They looked ordinary and did not have Yu Baoqi's explosive muscles, nor did they have a tall and sturdy body. When the 5 of them stood together, some of them were even shorter than Qing Tai and the others by a head. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. However, when the 5 of them revealed their scars and strong 8-pack abs, Zhang Feng decisively shut his mouth. He pointed to the armor at the side and said, "This time, we are not training to go on the battlefield to kill the enemy. Have you heard of Kuju?" Scarface nodded. Zhang Feng asked again, "This time, we are using Kuju to train a new type of toy. You can casually bump into people on the field, but the only condition is that you are not allowed to hit people or kick their crotch. Whoever dares to hit people will be disqualified. Then, the field will be divided into 2 groups, the vanguard and the backline. As for the individual selection, we originally needed 15 people, but I only chose 10. As for the remaining people, you can find them yourselves. However, the only condition is that they must scratch, hit, or hammer. Once they do that, they will break the rules and will not be recruited in the future." Zhang Feng explained the rules of rugby 3 times intermittently. Only then did he explain the rules that were similar to rugby. He even personally went on the field to train for 2 hours. Only then did he leave after Yu Shernan's repeated calls. When he took off his protective armor, he rubbed his aching chest and stared at Scarface. "What is your name?" Scarface heard this and quickly took off his armor. "My name is Jia Daoren, Jia Daoren. Daoish Jia." Zhang Feng had always admired the naming system of the Tang Dynasty, but this time, Zhang Feng was still amazed. He stared and asked, "None of you are called Duziting, right?" "Yes," a weak voice came out from the mouth of a man in armor. Zhang Feng rubbed his head and waved his hand, "Continue with the training." "Oh right, Daoist, let Ma Zhou take the rest of your brothers to my mansion. You will be in charge of everything in the mansion. Oh right, you have to pay more attention to the place where the 3 old men are. Without my permission, no one is allowed to enter." Qing Chumo and the others were already panting heavily, but when they heard Zhang Feng's words, their eyes instantly lit up. Ever since this grandson returned to the mountain, it was as if he had changed into a different person. Even a certain place in the resort was not allowed to enter. Could it be that he was hiding something that couldn't be seen? As soon as Zhang Feng left, Li Qingqian instantly screamed and took off the armor on his head. He lay on his back on the ground and wailed again and again. From last night until now, it was almost noon. How could anyone torture someone like this? They didn't know which careless man it was, but he actually took the armor of a general. The weight of the armor was about 25 kilograms. After this set of movements, everyone was already exhausted. At this time, Jia Daoren squatted beside Qing Chumo. Qing Chumo also knew what he meant. He glanced at the people playing basketball next to him and said, "Just call me Tainyo. On the mountain, everyone is equal." This time, Jia Daoren couldn't sit still. Although he had already known about this situation from Cripple Wang, now it seemed that he really didn't dare to believe it. After all, he had seen the son of the god of slaughter Qing Yaojin in the army. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Zhang Feng could actually train a good lunatic to be so docile. Then, I'll respectfully accept. Jia Daoren sighed and said, "Since the dean has asked me to train you, and it's in such a tight time, then don't blame me. I don't know what you were in the past, but now you only have one identity left. Either you're dead, or you're my soldiers. There are only two choices left. Either get lost now and be a rich second generation, or shut your mouth and do whatever I say. Damn you. You dare to open a dye house just because I gave you some color." Qing Chumo was furious. But Jia Daoren really misinterpreted his meaning. He thought that the son of General Qing, Qing Chumo, must have discussed it with Dean Zhang Feng. This time, the matter was more serious, so he wanted him to train them to death. Such a strange request, although it made Jia Daoren a little nervous, but Qing Chumo had already said that he should do what he should do. He couldn't possibly let this bowl of rice down, right? So, on the other side. With a frosty face, Yu Shinan looked at the listless Zhang Feng and scolded, "Look at what you've done. This is obviously the academy. You actually want to find a person who practices martial arts to teach them. And you even have to wear armor. What is this? It's simply incongruous." Zhang Feng smiled weakly and said, "Teacher, have you ever heard of a saying, only through suffering can one rise above others?" Chapter 970. Yu Shinan heard this and sighed. Look at this. Are the barbarians in the barracks celebrating, or are the students of the academy going crazy? Zhang Feng's face darkened. What are you talking about? You may not know, but in this mid-autumn hunt, something has happened. Zhang Feng sighed helplessly and pointed at Qing Chumo and the others. There is nothing we can do about it, so we decided to do this. Later, the students will go to the workshop and ask them to make a batch of special protective gear. Of course, if you are worried, you can go with the students to the mid-autumn hunt yourself. There were still 4 days left. Yu Shinan was also anxious today. After hearing that Zhang Feng was doing something strange, he hurried over to see what this kid wanted to do. But what he saw almost angered him to death. The time was almost up, and he was doing something new. Even if it was Kuju, 3 days of practice might not be enough. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. Looking at Yu Shinan, who was slightly angry, he said, "Teacher, don't be anxious. Listen to my plan first." Seeing Zhang Feng staring at him with a burning gaze, Yu Shinan could not help but wave his hand. "Anyway, this academy is yours. Tell me your plan." "Teacher, what I'm teaching now is called rugby. Although it's a bit rushed at this time, what will happen if I change it to Kuju? What I am doing is to train their ability to react on the spot, as well as their ability to cooperate. If it is Kuju, even if I don't say it, you naturally know. There is no order to it, and every time Kuju is played, there will be many people's skin and flesh lacerated, and even their bones and tendons will be broken. Do you think there is any order to it? They're all fighting randomly, or they're using brute force to beat the other side down. What's this? This is the behavior of bandits. Kuju was originally an entertainment to strengthen the body, but they turned it into this. It's simply unsightly. Zhang Feng was telling the truth. Yu Shinan couldn't help but be moved. The appearance of Kuju was originally for entertainment, but it gradually developed into a tool for profit and competition. It had even become a tool for those rich families to compete with their financial resources. Where was the meaning of Kuju? That was why Yu Shinan was so angry when he saw how Zhang Feng dressed the students. At this time, listening to Zhang Feng's words, he couldn't help but nod. He had not paid attention to Kuju for a long time. He didn't even bother going to the mid-autumn hunt anymore. The main reason was that during the mid-autumn hunt every year, other than playing Kuju and reciting poems, it was all about competing with each other. Yu Shinan couldn't help but look at the people in the field again. He was really looking forward to it. If Zhang Feng's change this time could change the culture of Kuju in the Tang Dynasty, it would be best if basketball and football were added into the mix. Wouldn't that be what everyone wanted to see? Basketball could strengthen the body and train the body. He had seen it with his own eyes during this period. Although it was temporarily ruined by the Imperial College's people, if Zhang Feng could win this mid-autumn hunt, then basketball and football would be considered a success. When the time came, Zhang Feng would invite these people to White Deer College. When these people came to the college, they would first be shown the college's radio gymnastics, then basketball and football. At that time, Yu Shinan couldn't help but feel a little excited. The scene of thousands of people doing exercises on the mountain at the same time was quite spectacular. Thinking of this, Yu Shinan grabbed Zhang Feng. However, after thinking for a while, his face turned red and he said, "Feng, are you sure you can win this mid-autumn hunt? If not, why would I go?" Zhang Feng asked in reply. "Well, let me tell you something. Can you explain it to me? Do you mean that you want this group of little guys to train their teamwork skills by playing catenary football during this period of time? And Ma Zhou and the others asked them to train basketball with the purpose of teaching it to the entire academy in the future?" Yes. After hearing Yu Shinan's words, Zhang Feng really had a bold idea. That was to go down the mountain to train, just like the monks in TV dramas. Looking around, he grabbed Yu Shinan's arm and said, "Mr. Bo-Shi, please come with me. I do have a big plan. Listen to it first." While they were talking, Zhang Feng pulled Yu Shinan into the small wooden house again. After closing the door, Zhang Feng said, "Look, I've seen basketball in Chang and City these days. Basically, many people don't know how to play it. That's what I mean. The college hasn't opened yet, right? I plan to train a group of people and let this group of people train all the students in the college. Then, before the college opens, I'll let these more than 3,000 people go to Chang and City and let them teach it to everyone in Chang and this way, we can spread the correct way to use basketball. What do you think?" Chapter 971. Previously, he had been troubled by a lot of things. Zhang Feng had not thought about how to make the people of the Tang Dynasty accept basketball quickly. At this moment, he seemed to have found a way. The main thing was to win the mid-autumn hunt and let the observation group from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights come to White Deer College. At that time, when they went up the mountain, all the students would use the effect of radio gymnastics to promote the popularity of basketball and football. In this way, those who liked gentle people would play basketball. As for those who were reckless and rough, they would play football. As long as they had the strength to break the protective gear, they could do it. Anyway, a protective gear cost 100 strings of coins. In this way, the business would be done. The popularity of basketball and football would not disappear because of the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights disapproval. Instead, it would increase greatly. Mr. Bo, sure, I'm going to change all the teachers and students, as well as the teachers and students of Chang and University, into a new style of school uniform. What do you think? If we're going to do it, we'll make it big. What do you think? Yushernan narrowed his eyes and wandered around the living room for a long time. After weighing the pros and cons, he asked, "Tell me what the school uniform looks like first." If we go to a ready-made clothing store to buy ready-made clothes, the entire Chang and city would not be able to produce so many things at once. However, if you want to customize it, even all the ready-made clothing stores in Chang and city would not be able to do it. Zhang Feng did not say anything. He turned around and drew the style, material, and so on. He thought of the school uniform on a piece of paper. The style of the school uniform was made according to the style of the Chinese tunic suit. He even drew the student's hat at that time. Yushernan looked at the style that was similar to that of the Hu people and the commoners. He frowned slightly. What style is this? It's so weird. You don't understand this, do you? This is called beauty. If there's no beauty in anything, what's the point of it? This is also because there's not enough time. If there's enough time, I want to customize a batch of basketball uniforms and a set of football uniforms. If there's a female class in the future, I want to have uniforms for all the female students. Yushernan was at a loss. If he were to wear such a costume, then, wouldn't he be no different from a commoner? How was this appearance any different from the extraterrestrial barbarians? He did not believe that this was the only way Zhang Feng could think of. He shook his head and said, "No, your idea is very good. The academy must have its own service. For example, Confucian scholars need to wear Confucian robes, commoners wear short shirts, and soldiers wear their armor. This is a principle that has never changed since ancient times. Have you ever seen a commoner wear Confucian robes? This is simply ridiculous. This matter is not under discussion." Zhang Feng's eyes flashed with disappointment. He was still a little too hasty. In this era, there were still some rules about class division and dressing. For example, there were strict rules about sitting, walking, eating, sleeping, and so on. At this time, it was simply impossible for this group of stubborn old men to change their inherent thinking. Thinking of this, the excitement on Zhang Feng's face slowly dissipated. He lit a cigarette and sat in the room. After walking a few rounds, he said, "Teacher, what do you think if we use sky blue as the main color and customize a batch of Confucian robes that belong to us? Although I have a textile factory with this concept here, and I've told Lao Li before that there are 3 major factories. Now there are 4 types of factories: the paper factory, the smelter factory, the rubber factory, and the winery. However, the most important textile factory is also the time to prepare. Textile factory. Tell me about your plan." At this time, Lao Li and the others really haven't told me about it. As for the other things you said, the old man has seen them before. Do you want to use this school uniform to start a textile factory? Yushernan took a sip of the pot of tea that Zhang Feng didn't know how long it had been. The main thing was that this lazy guy's furnace was extinguished. At this time, his mouth was abnormally dry. It was too late to start a fire. The most important thing was that Yushernan wanted to suppress the hot blood in his heart. He knew that Zhang Feng was keeping him in suspense. However, it was also because of this suspense that Yushernan was dying of curiosity at this time. Yushernan wanted to refute, but when he thought of the few things this kid came up with that were so shocking, he couldn't help but have a strong interest in the textile factory that he heard Li Yuan mention before. After all, at this time, the Tang Dynasty was basically mainly based on silk, ceramics, and tea leaves. And the production of silk, how to start a factory. Did they want to plant mulberry trees in this back mountain? In this case, without 7 or 8 years, how could it be done well? With a stomach full of doubts, Yu Shinan stared into Zhang Feng's eyes and asked, "Fengzi, tell me about your idea. And this textile factory, how do you want to do it?" Zhang Feng smiled confidently and said, "In fact, it's nothing. You know that someone is messing with me now, but at present, I really don't know who is messing with me. We have to find a way. Now that Lao Niu has brought people to Lantian to look for coal mines, this is bound to be related to the Taiyuan Wang clan. And now, basically all the major noble families have been provoked. As the saying goes, when there are too many lice, it doesn't itch. So we might as well take the initiative to leak the spearhead. Aren't they hiding in the dark? Then let's do something big. We will take the initiative to attack from the business, as well as the cultural industry of this academy, and so on. What do you think? Sitting and waiting for death is not my character, Zhang Feng. Chapter 972. Yu Shinan was so shocked by Zhang Feng's words that he smacked his lips twice. They had come to Shao Mountain not to satisfy their appetite, nor to see how good Zhang Feng was at stirring up trouble. What they valued was Zhang Feng's courage and insight, as well as his unique and innovative teaching methods. They had also seen the problem that Zhang Feng was facing. They couldn't see anything in terms of business at the moment. After all, everything had reached its climax. Even if others wanted to, they couldn't replicate it. This was the trigger for the conflict. If they couldn't do anything to Shao Mountain, what could they do? Wouldn't it be better to destroy Shao Mountain in other ways? Wouldn't this be exactly what they wanted? They couldn't find a Kuja team, so they deliberately delayed the release of the news. Then, they only released the news 5 days before the basketball game was rejected. Anyone would be angry. As for those people in the dark, they were waiting for Zhang Feng to get angry. Once Zhang Feng got angry, there would be a joint report. Zhang Feng publicly insulted the court officials and was dissatisfied with the mid-autumn hunt. Although Yu Shinan and the others knew that Lao Li was the emperor, they couldn't stop these people from gossiping. Even if Zhang Feng chose to remain silent, when the time came for the autumn hunt, if the disciples of the White Deer Institute were to lose out, the White Deer Institute would still be shut down. Wasn't this exactly what they wanted? They couldn't do anything to you if you hid on the mountain. However, they just had to destroy everything on the mountain. Wouldn't you come down the mountain? But now, Yu Shinan suddenly realized Zhang Feng's intention from Zhang Feng's plan. He wanted to start a war with the people hiding in the dark. Zhang Feng was really angry. Yu Shinan couldn't help but mourn for Zhang Feng's enemies when he thought of the terrifying weapons in the smelter and what Zhang Feng said at that time. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He waved his hand and said, "Come up with a plan immediately. We'll discuss it with Lao Li later. You just focus on preparing for the mid-autumn hunt. We'll take care of these things. After all, Old Man and the others haven't been seen in the market for the past 2 years. They say that the Old Man and the others are part of White Deer College. They don't even give face to the Old Man. Old Man wants to see who dares to mess with me." Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he heard this. He was waiting for this sentence. As long as the 4 Confucian scholars stood up and supported him, what did he have to be afraid of? He hurriedly bent over the table and wrote down the plan. Yu Shinan asked, "Now tell me, how are you going to set up the textile factory? You can't possibly plant mulberry trees in the back of the mountain and wait 7 or 8 years before you start weaving, right?" I told Lao Li about the textile factory. It's going to be built under the waterfall. We'll build a water wheel there and use the water wheel to drive the linkage. Then, we'll be able to operate hundreds of looms at the same time. Plus, we won't need many people to operate it. Yu Shinan wanted to say that it was a fantasy, but when he opened his mouth, he couldn't say anything. At this moment, Yu Qigong, who they thought had already left the mountain, suddenly shouted at the door. Zhang Feng was so scared that his hand trembled. A good piece of paper was basically scrapped. Zhang Feng complained with some annoyance, "Old you, can you **king make a sound like thunder?" "I'm fine, but what if something happens to Mr. Boshi because you scared him? Can you bear the responsibility?" However, Gong acted as if he didn't hear him. He rubbed his hands and walked into the living room. He stared at Zhang Feng with shining eyes and asked, "You said that something like that, can you leave it to my people to do it?" Zhang Feng looked at Gong, who was almost drooling as he stared at him, and felt the hairs on his body stand up. Old Yu already had a rough appearance. If his portrait was pasted on the door, it would be even more effective than a door god. At this moment, Gong was excited. The army had always lacked food and clothing. On one hand, it was because of the problem of salary. As long as there was a way to earn money, Gong would do it even if he had to rob. After all, there were so many brothers in the army who were crying piteously for food. Seeing that it was going to get cold soon, he began to worry about the army's winter clothing. There was a lot of activity in the army, and a piece of clothing would be torn after a short period of time. In addition, they had to move around in the muddy water all year round. Sometimes, they were so sleepy that they couldn't stand it anymore. Many soldiers would wrap themselves in their clothes and lie down in the mud to sleep. A piece of clothing couldn't last for 3 months. It was about the same as the clothes of a beggar. Every year, every season, the imperial court would only distribute clothing and supplies. However, this was basically a drop in the bucket. The amount of clothing that could be distributed in the army was based on the number of people on the permanent staff. In addition to the permanent staff, there were more people than the permanent staff. Outside of the permanent staff, there were people who gathered intelligence for them and sent messages. These people's identities were all hidden. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would report their status. The main reason was to protect these people. Therefore, it didn't matter during the summer. At worst, they could just go bare-chested. However, it was impossible during the winter. Every winter, there would be a large number of soldiers who would freeze to death due to hunger and cold. Now that he had gotten a piece of information from Zhang Feng that could allow his brothers to have a good winter, how could he give up on this hope? Chapter 973. The more he thought about it, the more agitated Gong became. He stepped forward and grabbed Zhang Feng's shoulders. "Brat, let me ask you. What do you think about the textile factory's effects? When will it start?" His eyes were half hopeful, half pleading. Zhang Feng's eyes rolled back. He hit Gong's hand weakly and said, "Old you. Can you let go of me first? I'm about to be choked to death by you." Zhang Feng could almost hear his shoulder blades groaning in pain. "I won't let go. If you don't say it, I won't let go even if I die." Gong seemed to have fallen into a state of madness. His hands were like iron pincers that tightly gripped Zhang Feng. It was as if he would strangle Zhang Feng to death if Zhang Feng dared to say no. Zhang Feng kept cursing in his heart, but he didn't dare to curse out loud. Nan was also a little anxious. He saw the cold sweat on Zhang Feng's face and his trembling hands and feet. He quickly stepped forward and grabbed Gong's arm. Old man ordered you to let go. If you don't let go, this brat will die." Gong stared at Nan with bloodshot eyes. Instantly, Nan was so scared that he stepped back and fell into a chair. Zhang Feng was also a little frightened by Gong's current state. He quickly said, "Old you, let's talk nicely. I've been planning for this textile factory for a long time. Laoli knows about it, but it's still early and I've been too busy recently. Where would I have the time? If I hadn't mentioned the school uniform today." "Why? Why didn't you get this thing out earlier?" Yuchi Gong stared at Zhang Feng with bloodshot eyes. Why didn't you get this thing out 10 years ago? Do you know how we survived the winter 10 years ago? You didn't experience the winter of Long Yu Dao, right? At that time, my family, my brothers were lost in the vast desert. In the end, they were forced into the snowy mountains by the Turks. It wasn't that my brothers couldn't fight. If they fought, they wouldn't be a match even if they had several times the number of my brothers. But they were cold. In the end, they were frozen to death on Mount Qilian. When we finally found them, hundreds of people were holding their weapons and our supplies, frozen into ice sculptures. Feng Zi, have you ever had such an experience? If you see your life and death friends, when you see Tai Niu and the others, what? As he spoke, Yuchi Gong cried. As soon as he thought of these Motherf Kurs and his brothers who had been frozen to death, Yuchi Gong exploded. He said with a hoarse voice, "You are indeed an expert, but so what? Where were you back then? Even if you weren't around back then, why didn't your master take this out? Go and ask around about Long Yu Dao. If it weren't for me. Old Yu." Yu Shinan saw that Yuchi Gong had completely lost his mind and almost revealed what had happened back then. He hurriedly scolded, "Old man, I know you care about your brothers, but they can't come back to life. Besides, this isn't Fang's fault. Why are you venting your anger on Feng? If you have the ability, go argue with Lao Li." "Ah!" Yuchi Gong angrily roared to the sky. The people training outside the door were so scared that they didn't know what had happened. But Scarface, Jia Daoren, had never seen General Yuchi roar like this before. He couldn't help but feel sad. He also roared, "Continue training. As long as you don't die, go all out." Inside the room, Yuchi Gong seemed to have sobered up a bit after the angry roar. He stared at Zhang Feng and continued, "Feng, my tone is a bit harsh, but you really don't understand some things. Haven't you always wondered why we have so much strength? Why people like us can do business? Have you been wondering why our military training can be tested in the Chang and military camp?" Zhang Feng hadn't thought about it. Now that Yuchi Gong took the initiative to talk about it, he couldn't help but nod curiously, forgetting the pain in his shoulder. Yu Shinan opened his mouth and finally sighed. He smoked fiercely and didn't want to look into Yuchi Gong's eyes. Yuchi Gong said as if he was sleep-talking, 10 years ago, we were young men in our 20s. Our families suffered a disaster. I was born a blacksmith. Old He was also born a farmer. But because of the turmoil, we had to join the army to fill our stomachs. We thought that we could eat well after joining the army, but we didn't expect that the darkness in the army was not a place for people to stay. At that time, the army I was in was stationed at the Jade Gate Pass outside Liangzhou. A group of playmates from my village who grew up with me were on their way back to escort supplies when they encountered the Turks heading south. In order to protect the supplies, Yuchi Gong couldn't stop his tears from flowing as he spoke. So after that, Old He and I left the army camp. But our brothers couldn't die in vain. That's why we try our best to earn money every year and give them as many supplies as we can. Every time I see those cheering soldiers in the barracks, I can't help but think of my old friend's shadow, so some people always say that we're rough people, that we're boorish people. Why? Who are we protecting with our lives? If it weren't for the border that we used our lives to fill, who the F***ck would be so comfortable now? Why? Why do rich people look down on us? Why? Chapter 974. The more Yuchi Gong spoke, the more agitated he became. The anger that had been suppressed in his heart for more than 10 years completely exploded at this moment. He shook Zhang Feng's shoulders with all his might, tears streaming down his face. It was as if Zhang Feng, who was in his hands, was the murderer who had killed his brother. Seeing Yuqi Gong's crazed state, Zhang Feng was no longer anxious or worried. He could feel Yuqi Gong's heart-wrenching pain, despair, and coldness. He was a person who had seen the most despairing thing in his life, but now, he could easily obtain warmth. Under the surging emotions of loss and gain, he actually thought of his former brother. He thought of the tragic state of his brother who had been frozen into an ice sculpture in order to give the resources in his hands to the brother who needed him more and went to protect his home. So, emotions needed to be vented. When something was buried in one's heart for a long time, it would multiply. When it encountered a trigger point, this kind of grief and sorrow would be vented out like a geyser. Just as Zhang Feng was thinking about how to make old Yu let go, he heard a muffled sound. Yuqi Gong, who was strangling him, slowly fell to the ground. Behind him, the gloomy Qing Yao Jin slowly withdrew his hand knife. It was obvious that this hand knife was made by him. Originally, Qing Yao Jin was preparing to go to Chang'an City. After learning about Zhang Feng's situation, he wanted to go up the mountain to take a look, but he ended up seeing the scene. He also saw the crazed Yuqi Gong. He was afraid that he would hurt Zhang Feng, so he decisively knocked him out. At this time, Zhang Feng slowly collapsed on the recliner, gasping for breath. His two arms seemed to have no feeling, hanging limply on both sides, extremely numb and itchy. Qing Yao Jin didn't care about the unconscious Yuqi Gong on the ground. He dragged him aside by his feet and tore open Zhang Feng's clothes. As soon as he tore open the clothes, Qing Yao Jin and Yu Shinan couldn't help but gasp. They saw that both sides of Zhang Feng's neck were swollen, and the places where he had been strangled were bruised. Zhang Feng's arms were purplish-black. Obviously, there was a serious lack of blood. Zhang Feng struggled to wave his hands, but the pain made him grit his teeth. He could only smile bitterly and say, "I'm fine. It's just that my shoulders hurt a lot. I should be fine after resting for 2 days and applying my alcohol. This is a lack of blood. I just need to move around." Zhang Feng saw that Qing Yao Jin was holding his shoulders and his eyes were filled with tears. He quickly continued to say, "It was my fault just now. Old Yu's mind was too agitated. He needs to recuperate. I don't dare to be careless. It's best to ask old Sun to prescribe him some medicine." Qing Yao Jin glared at Zhang Feng and said, "You're too careless. If I didn't come in time, who knows what would have happened. You're in so much pain, and you still have the time to care about that old bastard. If you don't win this time, if you don't win the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, it'll be intolerable." Qing Yao Jin was somewhat gratified by Zhang Feng's performance. If Lao Li knew about this, then the consequences. He turned his head and glared at Yu Shinan and said, "It's not like you don't know old Yu's temper. When he's angry, no one can drink from him. Just bear with it and watch. What if something happens to Feng Zi? As long as you shout, Lao Tzu doesn't believe that Iron Bowl and the others won't be able to do anything to him." As he spoke, Qing Yao Jin angrily rushed to the door. He glared at Qing Chumo and the others and waved his hand. Then he pointed at Qing Chumo and the others and scolded, "You guys are Feng Zi's brothers. Just now, something almost happened to Feng Zi in front of you. Don't you guys know? Have all the food you've eaten all these years gone to the dogs' stomachs? And you guys have been in the military for more than 10 years. Are you guys just waiting to die in the military? Can't you see that? Wait, all of you, go and receive your rewards. Everyone will follow the military rules and receive 20 military trophies. If there's a next time, don't blame Lao Tzu for not recognizing you." No one dared to say anything. Now that Zhang Feng was lying in the room, he couldn't see Qing Yao Jin's appearance. Otherwise, he would have been shocked. At this time, Qing Yao Jin had returned to the appearance of the ruthless demon king in Chang'an. His entire body was filled with murderous intent. Zhang Feng endured the soreness in his body and hurriedly asked Yu Shinan to help him out of the room. As soon as he stepped out of the room, he bitterly smiled and said, "It was supposed to be a happy occasion, but I was deliberately mystifying it and caused a misunderstanding. I've implicated you all. When I'm better, I'll make a table of good things that you haven't eaten before. I'll make it up to you as an apology. How about that?" Chapter 975. Shiwa ran to Sun Simiao's bamboo hut as soon as the incident happened. After a while, Sun Simiao, Ouyang Sun, and the others rushed over after hearing about Zhang Feng's incident. Qing Chumo and the others put Zhang Feng on the bed in a flurry. However, Zhang Feng screamed the moment he touched the bed. Sun Simiao's face darkened as he glared at Qing Yaojin and Yuqi Gong, who was lying on the ground. Ouyang Sun, who disliked Zhang Feng the most, was furious when he heard that Zhang Feng was in trouble and that the culprit was Yuqi Gong. He was so angry that he kicked Yuqi Gong's butt a few times as soon as he entered the room. When Sun Simiao arrived, he chased everyone out, including Hai Huai and Yuqi Gong. Only he and Zhang Feng were left in the wooden hut. Outside the wooden hut, everyone's face darkened. Qing Yaojin clenched his fists and sighed in front of the wooden hut with his hands behind his back. He knew Yuqi Gong's strength very well. That guy had always been holding a lamb in his hands. He could have crushed it with one hand. How much strength did he have? Could Zhang Feng's neck be stronger than that lamb's head? The meteor hammer was as light as a feather in his hands. What was the weight of other people's meteor hammers? More than 10 caddies were already impressive, but this guy's meteor hammer weighed a total of 40 caddies. With this kind of strength, how much strength could he possibly have when his mind was in turmoil just now? One could tell just by looking at Zhang Feng's neck and arms. If by any chance something really happened to this brat, it would be strange if the emperor and the retired emperor didn't kill everyone here based on their tempers. However, Yuqi Gong couldn't be blamed completely. This old guy was also sad because of that incident. Yuqi Gong was Niu Jinda. Li Jing and the others had been partners with him for many years. Everyone knew their tempers very well. Therefore, everyone chose not to touch on the matter of that year. Watching more than 700 of his brothers from the same village being frozen into ice sculptures right in front of his eyes with widened eyes and weapons in hand, no one would be able to bear it. This left a lingering shadow in the heart of this man who was made of iron forever. In the room. When Sun Simiao removed all of Zhang Feng's clothes, he couldn't help but be shocked. His face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Seeing this, Zhang Feng endured the pain and said, "Elder son, don't be angry. It's nothing. That's nothing. You're already injured to this extent, and you still say that you're fine. How big is your heart? From now on, don't speak. Old man, I'm going to perform acupuncture. I'll open up the blood vessels in your arms first." As he spoke, Sun Simiao took out his box of silver needles that were comparable to barbecue sticks and was about to stab him. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly shouted, "Wait a moment. I'll show you something good. Wipe it on your body. This thing can be said to be a treasure. It can reduce inflammation, promote blood circulation, and disinfect miraculously." Sun Simiao didn't want to pay attention to Zhang Feng. He held the silver needle above the oil lamp and was about to stab Zhang Feng. This scared Zhang Feng so much that he dodged repeatedly. "Elder son, trust me this time. How can I mess around with my life? This is something I prepared long ago. This thing is called alcohol. It's a treasure extracted from white wine." Sun Simiao had studied white wine before. As long as this thing was lit with fire and used on people, it would indeed have the magical effect of promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say that there was something good, he frowned. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You should have taken it out a little earlier. Zhang Feng was afraid that elder son would copy old Yu, so he hurriedly struggled to sit up. Then he used his mouth to point at the shoe box he created and said, "It's inconvenient for me to move around. Elder son, please help me take it out. It's in the secret compartment under the shoe box." Although Sun Simiao was a little suspicious, Zhang Feng still couldn't bear to see Zhang Feng sucking in cold air in pain. Gritting his teeth, Sun Simiao poked his head down to look for it. Sure enough, the bottom of the shoe box was pulled out. Sure enough, there was a sound like a door bolt. Then Sun Simiao's hand lifted up vigorously. A secret compartment appeared under the shoe box. There was also a burst of wine fragrance inside. The secret compartment was about half the size of the bed, but there were about 7 or 8 jars of wine neatly placed inside. Sun Simiao glanced at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "This is the last of my stock. There's really no more white wine. By the way, the jar with the word alcohol circled with red paint is alcohol. Don't take the wrong one." Sun Simiao didn't say anything. He picked up a few small wine jars that were only the size of a fist next to a big jar. He took 5 of them and put them into his arms. He took out another jar, first opened the mud seal and drank a mouthful. Then he slowly closed the secret compartment and asked, "How do I use this thing?" "Let's use the same method as the white wine trial. Pat it or rub it." Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Rub it first, and then pat it after the body is hot. The effect will be better. Do you have a smaller silver needle, such as a silver needle as thick as a strand of hair?" Sun Simiao took out the largest silver needle from the box full of silver needles. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "No, do you want to prick open the extravasated blood? Or just let him be in pain like this?" Chapter 976. Outside the small wooden hut. Ouyang Sun and the others had also heard the news and came over. When they saw Yu Shinan and the others, they gathered together and whispered, pointing at Yu Qigong from time to time. Yu Qigong was anxious, his right fist pounding back and forth in his left palm as he paced around Zhang Feng's door. At this moment, 1 or 2 screams and groans could be heard from inside the room, causing Yu Qigong and the others to be even more alarmed. If this had happened to someone else, they really wouldn't have cared. But this was Zhang Feng, and it was a huge mistake that he had made himself. At this moment, even Yu Qigong, a man of steel, felt his cheeks turn red. But when he thought of the thing that Zhang Feng had mentioned, Yu Qigong stiffened his neck and felt that it was right. Qing Yaojin looked at Yu Qigong, then at Ouyang Sun and the others, and then at Zhang Feng's tightly shut door. He couldn't help but sigh and pat Yu Qigong on the shoulder. He could understand Yu Qigong's current feelings. No one would be able to remain calm at this moment. If Zhang Feng's thing was created, what would it be like? It would allow the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the army to never suffer from the cold again. It wasn't just Yu Qigong. Even he himself was boiling with excitement when he heard about this. At this moment, Zhang Feng's tightly shut door slowly opened, and Sun Simiao walked out with a medicine box. Seeing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly went up and asked, "Elder son, how is Feng Zi?" Sun Simiao glared at Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin, the warning in his eyes self-evident. "Feng Zi is fine. His shoulders are a little dislocated, and his meridians are blocked and shifted. Old man has already used acupuncture to release the clotted blood and reset his bones. As long as he recuperates, he will be fine. But listen carefully, if you dare to cause trouble again, I will definitely report Feng Zi's matter as it is." Hearing Sun Simiao's words, Yu Qigong and the others breathed a sigh of relief. As long as there were no sequelae, this kid was only 20 years old. After a few days of recuperation and some nourishing ingredients, he would be able to jump around again. In the end, Yu Qigong still held back. Otherwise, would his shoulders be as hard as a sheep's head? Coupled with Zhang Feng's miraculous alcohol, Sun Simiao could only relieve the blood clot on his arm and then reposition it. At this moment, his mind was still filled with the word alcohol. Sun Simiao took a look at the fist-sized porcelain bottle of alcohol that he had gotten from Zhang Feng. He happily went to brew the medicine for Zhang Feng, and while he was at it, he also went to study the gunpowder potion. As soon as Sun Simiao left, Yu Qigong and Qing Yao Jin went straight to Zhang Feng's bedroom. Shiva, who was at the door, pretended not to see anything and went back to training with Qing Chumo and Scarface Jia Daoren. As soon as the six of them entered, they could smell the smell of alcohol in the air. They couldn't help but look at each other. There was still some left. What time was it now? Could it be that he was secretly drinking just now? Zhang Feng leaned against the pillow with difficulty. As if he could see the intentions of the four, he hurriedly said, "This is alcohol. You've seen Idiot Way before. If you want to drink, I don't care. But please go down the mountain and drink. I still have half a jar here. It's enough for you to die." Yu Shinan and the others didn't understand what it was. After Qing Yao Jin explained, they could only rub their noses and pretend they didn't hear anything. They pointed at Zhang Feng's arm. Yu Shinan asked, "The smell of alcohol on you, is it alcohol?" "Yes, old Yu and the others know. I haven't used this before, but this time, it's all thanks to this thing. Otherwise, this kid really wouldn't be able to escape this time." They couldn't help but criticize in their hearts. Was this thing really that magical? However, Zhang Feng didn't dare to elaborate. There was only a little left of this thing now. If he didn't save a little, he might run into another idiot one day and finish it for him. If he encountered such an emergency, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. Yu Qigong stared at Zhang Feng with red eyes and said, "Feng Zi, are you sure you're okay?" Zhang Feng's face was pale as he grimaced. He raised his right hand with difficulty and instantly grimaced in pain. Then, before Zhang Feng could finish, Yu Qigong saw this and began to undress with a serious expression. He also took out the broom behind the door and threw it to Zhang Feng. "Feng Zi, this time, I was reckless. You can scold or hit me if you want. But after that, can you take responsibility for this manufacturing workshop? I promise that I'll give you as much as you deserve. I don't want a single cent. However, you should know that many of our brothers in the army don't have enough food to eat or warm clothes to wear. Every winter, many people freeze to death. It's going to be winter soon. I, old you, really don't want to see the tragic state of our brothers back then. In the end, they froze to death in that place in order to protect their home. In the end, even their corpses didn't come back. Although I'm a businessman now, but," as he spoke, Yu Qigong had already taken off his clothes, leaving only his undershirt. Yu Shinan and the others were also touched. They looked at Zhang Feng without saying a word. Zhang Feng sighed and said, "When did I say I wanted to hit you? Even if you didn't say it, I would still sell these things. I promise you, I'll let you take full responsibility for this matter." Chapter 977. Yu Qigong was like a child as he walked away happily. Zhang Feng sighed indifferently. Ouyang Sun and Chu Suiliang opened their mouths, but in the end, they left Yu Shinan behind and left silently. Yu Shinan and Qing Yao Jin carried Zhang Feng from the bed to the lounge chair at the door. Qing Yao Jin wanted to say something a few times, but when the words reached his mouth, he couldn't say anything. Zhang Feng also saw the strange look on their faces. He smiled and said, "Mr. Bashi, old Qin, what kind of relationship do we have? If you have something to say, just say it. Old Yu is a straightforward person. Although the first time we met was a little unpleasant, I am not a person who holds grudges. I, young man, please don't blame old you for this. Yushernan smacked his lips and said, are you wondering why we, the high and mighty scholars, have such a close relationship with businessmen like Lao Li and old you? Zhang Feng didn't want to know that it was all fake. In this era, among the scholars, farmers, and businessmen, merchants were the lowest position. They were reviled as porters, who bought low and sold high, and so on. But this was the market economy. If it weren't for their existence, how could taxes and the circulation of goods be promoted? However, these scholars were all high and mighty characters. Normally, these merchants would have to salute even if they saw a Confucian scholar, let alone these famous Confucian scholars. However, since the beginning of Chang and University, the relationship between Lao Li and Yushernan, as well as Sun Simiao and the others, was as good as brothers. This made Zhang Feng curious. Zhang Feng nodded his head and said, I hope that teacher can clear up my doubts. However, I am also very curious. Lao Yu is a frank and upright person. Even if I made such a big joke with him before, Lao Yu didn't complain at all. But today, when we talked about the textile factory, why did his temperament change so much? Also, why would a brother be frozen like that? With his hands behind his back, Yushernan gazed at the dazzling sunlight in the east. Narrowing his eyes, he said, you might not be aware of this, but I'll have to start from the previous Yangguang army's expedition to Goguryeo. 300,000 soldiers were buried there. Do you think you can sit back and relax just because you're a commoner, a merchant, or a descendant of an aristocratic family? You're wrong. At the end of the Sui dynasty, there were 72 rebellious kings and 36 bandits who wreaked havoc in the world. How could there be a paradise in this world? At that time, old Yu and the others were hot-blooded youths who cared about their country and the world. But what happened in the end? Have you ever seen someone who was so hungry that they could only eat tree bark and roots to survive? Or have you ever seen people who eat rice and meat in order to survive? I've seen it. At this moment, Yushernan's entire body was trembling. His face was pale, as if he was recalling those tragic scenes. After a long while, he continued, originally, they were preparing to seek a living because of the disaster that befell their families. But when they saw these things on the way, they were all hot-blooded youths. Which one of them didn't want to quell the chaos and return peace to the world? But everyone has their own ambitions. From that time, we met in Chang and City and prepared to work together for the sake of the world. Don't ask how we met. After so many years, what you can see is our present. But what about what you haven't seen? So don't blame old you. At that time, after he joined the army, he was full of mettle. When he returned to the village, he basically brought all the youths in the village with him. But it was also on that winter day that he was stationed in Liangzhou because of military orders. Those from his village were not so lucky and became part of the army. In the winter of the 13th year of the Day Dynasty, more than 30 of his brothers and more than 100 of his village's descendants were attacked by the Sui dynasty soldiers and the Turks who took advantage of the chaos to raid the south. In the end, they were forced to enter Mount Qilian. At this point, Qing Yaojin saw that Yushernan's voice was trembling, so he sighed and said, that batch of military supplies was basically the first batch of military uniforms for the frontline soldiers to pass the winter. But how could 100 or 200 people resist 3,000 Turks? There were also Sui dynasty soldiers chasing after them. No one knew how they stopped those people. By the time we received the news, it was already the next day. When old Yu and I arrived, we saw that Mount Qilian was littered with corpses, all of them Turkic corpses. When we reached the summit, we saw that the ground was littered with Turkic corpses that had been tied to trees. Some of the soldiers had bitten a Turk's ear or a piece of flesh to death. Qing Yaojin's eyes were red. His fists were tightly clenched, and his already large eyes were so wide that they seemed like they would pop out of their sockets. Zhang Feng was silent. He stood up with difficulty and deeply bowed to the east. Gong lowered his head and crouched on the ground, his body twitching. No one knew what sorrowful memories he was going through. Yaojin calmed himself down and said, "By the time we reached the mountain, there were only 7 people left of the 100-some people. And behind these 7 people were our supplies. And they were still tightly gripping their weapons, their eyes still fixed on the enemy at the foot of the mountain. But their movements were forever frozen. So, Fengzi, this is a nightmare for everyone who experienced that battle. No one dares to lightly touch it, but today, alas." Yaojin heavily sighed, but in the end, he said nothing. There was only silence. Chapter 978. In the end, Zhang Feng still fell asleep after drinking the medicine. When he woke up, it was already the next morning. It was very quiet today. He didn't hear the angry shouts of the students doing their morning exercises, nor did he hear the sounds of morning exercises. It was as if he was in a dream. Zhang Feng's arms didn't hurt as much anymore. They were just a little sore. Under the effects of the alcohol and Sun Simiao's medicine, Zhang Feng's arms slowly recovered. Other than the soreness in his muscles, everything was normal. When he opened the door and was about to call Shiva to prepare breakfast, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. It was still foggy outside the door, and it wasn't bright yet. Zhang Feng wondered what time it was. He looked to the side and saw that Gong was still sitting in the same place he had been sitting the day before. Gong seemed to have not slept the entire night. He was carrying a mo dao in his hand. When Zhang Feng opened the door, Gong was about to slash the tendons of his left arm. There were already 2 streaks of blood on his arm, which flowed down his arm. When Zhang Feng saw this, he was instantly shocked. He quickly gritted his teeth and held the blade tightly. With his ruthlessness, if the knife went down, he would be crippled even if he didn't die. People in the military were always straightforward and didn't go back on their words. No one could change their minds once they made up their minds. Ever since Gong woke up yesterday, he had been very upset. As a stubborn person, he had always felt guilty. He thought that if Yaojin hadn't knocked him out, Zhang Feng might not have been alive. "Old you, if you treat me as your brother, then put down the knife. If you don't treat me, Zhang Feng, as your brother, then chop off my hand as well." Zhang Feng scolded him coldly. When Gong heard this, he instantly sighed hoarsely and said, "This is all my fault. If I hadn't gone crazy yesterday, how could you have ended up like this? You may have disturbed me, but in my heart, I can't forgive myself. If the mid-autumn hunt is delayed because of me, I won't be able to make up for it even if I die 10,000 times." Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted him. At this time, Yaojin, who had not slept the whole night and went to the depths of the Qinling Mountains to hunt a wild wolf, was carrying the wolf meat and happened to see this scene. He hastily stepped forward to dissuade him. "Old you, what are you doing? Fengzi is not that kind of person. Why are you so stubborn?" At this moment, the sound of morning exercises could be heard in the distance. Gong finally realized that he had been a little petty when he heard those lively voices. His cracked lips parted, but in the end, he still let out a deep sigh. Ignoring his bloody arm, he tore off a piece of cloth from his clothes to bandage it. However, he was stopped by Zhang Feng. In the future, such a large wound would require at least a dozen stitches. Zhang Feng pulled Gong to the living room and disinfected him with alcohol. Then, he used a sterilized cotton cloth to bandage Gong's wound. Zhang Feng saw that the 2 of them were staring at the small porcelain bottle in his hand and the cotton cloth that had been soaked in alcohol at high temperatures. He said, "This is the alcohol that I didn't want you to drink to your deaths. It's a good disinfectant. As for this gauze, forget it, let's not talk about it anymore." We'll talk about it again after the biology class. He knew that if he continued to talk about it, the two of them might come up to him and pull his arm and leg, instantly dismembering him. Yu Shinan and Sun Simiao were not here now. After doing all this, Zhang Feng bandaged his hand. After Zhang Feng bandaged it, Yu Qigong looked at the numb feeling on his arm and clicked his tongue in wonder. He waved his hand and said, I saw that you didn't eat last night, and this old man got another wolf. Today, you have to taste my cooking as an apology. If you don't agree, then, fine. I'll agree. Zhang Feng spread his hands and obediently followed the two of them. The two of them did not walk too far. They looked at Zhang Feng from afar. Then, the three of them went around the waterfall and came to the periphery of the farm. This was the place where they used to make beggars' chicken. However, now that the food factory was finished, this place was abandoned and used as fertilizer for the weeds. By the time the three of them arrived, Elder Gao had already built a small furnace made of mud by the stream. The fire inside was burning brightly. Seeing the three of them come, Elder Gao just glanced at them indifferently. Then, he pointed to the farm behind him and said, You came at the right time. Yesterday, when I heard that Fengzi's arm was injured, I sent someone to the foot of the mountain to find a wild lamb for Fengzi. Since you are here, go inside and take out the wine table. Shall we eat here? That's great. Zhang Feng had been hungry for a long time. At this time, when he heard that, how could he wait? The few of them quickly pressed Zhang Feng on a stone and sat next to the bonfire to wait. In less than a quarter of an hour, a roasted lamb was placed in front of Zhang Feng. Elder Gao did not care about his heartache and took out a jar of dusty white wine from the house. Zhang Feng, who had been drooling for a long time, was about to take the wine jar when Yu Qigong pressed him on the stone. You are injured, so you can't drink. Come. Eat more meat to nourish yourself. As he spoke, he took out a dagger that was also studded with gems. He cut off the best piece of meat from the lamb's thigh and placed it in front of Zhang Feng. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, he cut off a fist-sized lump from the meat and stuffed it into Zhang Feng's mouth. Qing Yao Jin, who was sitting side by side, saw this and kicked Yu Qigong out. Are you King feeding him? Or are you trying to kill Fengzi? Chapter 979. Yu Qigong glared at Qing Yao Jin as he got up from the mud. The meat in his hand was already covered in mud and soot. He was so angry that he threw the meat in his hand at Qing Yao Jin. Do you want Lao Tzu to feed you? If you want to eat, do it yourself. Qing Yao Jin wasn't afraid of him. He took the meat and deftly stabbed it with a dagger. Then, he placed it over the fire and shaved off the muddy parts. He ate with relish. Yu Qigong was so angry that his whole body trembled. Elder Gao hurriedly advised, All right. How old are you? Why are you still fighting over food? It's not like it was 10 years ago. Fengzi is a cultured person, unlike a barbarian like you. You have to eat properly. No wonder Lao Li always scolded you at home. Look at you. How old are you? What are you still doing here? Hearing that, Yu Qigong and Qing Yao Jin sat down angrily. Zhang Feng, on the other hand, had a very satisfying meal. He didn't know how Elder Gao had marinated the meat. There was even barbecue seasoning and a strong smell of pepper and cumin on the meat. Wild mutton had a strong gamey smell to begin with, but after being marinated like that, there was no gamey smell at all. There was even the smell of sandalwood. Coupled with the clear sky after the rain, Zhang Feng couldn't help but eat with great relish. He hadn't eaten properly during this period of time. It was rare for him to be so rough. However, Yu Qigong had to be put aside. That old man seemed to feel guilty. He kept stuffing meat into Zhang Feng's mouth. He would stuff whatever meat was good into Zhang Feng's mouth. Lamb tendon, lamb tendon, lamb tenderloin. Zhang Feng ate until he was about to cry. Most importantly, he wasn't allowed to drink. Smelling the delicious white wine and seeing the three people continuously gulping it down, Zhang Feng was envious. Finally, after Yu Qigong snatched a lamb leg from Qing Yao Jin, Zhang Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He stopped Yu Qigong. "Old Yu, are you trying to choke me to death or stuff me to death? You lost your mind because of your past pain and unintentionally hurt this kid. But this kid isn't a baby, right? Putting aside your age, I reckon that you guys are all my uncles. But thanks for not abandoning me, we've become brothers. I originally planned to have a good chat with you early in the morning, but then I saw you like this. How can I endure this?" Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Yu Qigong put down the meat in his hand. He sat opposite Zhang Feng and chuckled. "Your words are enough. But of course, you can't accept Lao Tzu's apology. Lao Tzu has been through all sorts of situations in his life. What hasn't Lao Tzu seen in his life? Previously, in the military, there were countless people who died at the hands of Lao Tzu. Even if he was wrong, Lao Tzu used his fists to force him to be straight. At most, he'll pay with his life. Lao Tzu has lived enough in this life. That time at Mount Qilian, he's already indifferent to life and death." When Qing Yao Jin heard this, he and old Gao sighed. Nothing came out of their mouths. Yu Qigong paused, but his lowered eyes were instantly filled with anger. He clenched his fists tightly and said, "In my place, people can die of old age, of illness, of being burned to death, chopped to death, drowned to death, scolded and trampled to death. There are many ways to die, but there are only two ways that are not allowed. And that is to freeze to death and starve to death. These are the most despairing and painful ways to die in the world. Lao Tzu has been in this world for so many years. Even though I've left the military, I'm still considered a soldier. And I still hope that my children will enter the military in the future. Yes. I hope that no one will starve to death or freeze to death in the future. I hope that one day, the people of the Tang Dynasty won't freeze to death or starve to death. I hope that they can have enough food and clothing. Even if you want Lao Tzu's life, you can have it. Lao Tzu doesn't have a single complaint." At this moment, Zhang Feng finally understood. No wonder Tai Nyo and the others are so strong. It's all because of you. But don't worry. Once my textile factory is implemented and the firearms are successfully developed, it'll be enough to protect the people of the Tang Dynasty, even if we don't expand our territory. Seeing that the topic had returned to the textile factory, Qing Yao Jin said, "I heard that you're going to use the waterfall for your textile factory. How many people do you need?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes. After all, human labor is limited. Even if they don't sleep for a day and a night, they can only spin 30 feet of cloth a day. That's already the limit. But I have a way here." Yu Qigong and the other two heard this and asked in unison, "What way?" "Using the natural advantages of the waterfall, we can make 12 water wheels. Using the water wheel's linkage, we can drive 100 to 300 large looms to weave cloth at the same time. And we only need 3 to 5 people to watch over it. And using the water wheel's linkage, one large textile machine can spin 1 bolt of cloth a day." 300 looms, Zhang Feng's voice stopped abruptly. He stared at the three and asked, "How many bolts of cloth do you think we can spin?" Chapter 980. For the next 3 days. Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao once again moved back to the mountain. The main reason was that Zhang Feng was too unreliable. As soon as they left, Zhang Feng was almost strangled to death by old Yu. When the old village head and the old scholar found out, the two old men almost used a kitchen knife to skin old Yu Xing. But fortunately, Lao Li called old Yu to Luo Zhou in time to deliver a batch of cement. This prevented the old scholar and the old village head from getting what they wanted. However, they once again pushed the two women to Zhang Feng. They glorified it by saying that they had to protect the Zhang family's property. Otherwise, if everyone did this, then what would the old Zhang family have? When Zhang Feng's doll came out and asked Lao Tzu for some special skills, what would he, Zhang Feng, have at that time? The two women seemed to know about the matter between Zhang Feng and Yu Er. But the Tang dynasty was good. The atmosphere was simply loved and hated by Zhang Feng. If you said it was not good, then you could have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Moreover, they could get along very well. If you said it was good, then this custom of having 3 wives and 4 concubines made Zhang Feng feel sorry for the two women. Today, Zhang Feng woke up early in the morning. Moreover, he was neatly dressed in the clothes of a great scholar. Zhang Yuyao, who was being held by him, was also wearing a rare gorgeous dress. This was given to her by Zhang Sun Wugo. As soon as she appeared, the group of wild beasts present screamed again and again. Zhang Sun Wugo nodded calmly. As for Jing Shu, there was no need to talk about her. She was dressed in light yellow with some pink decorations. She looked as noble as an imperial concubine. Compared to Zhang Yuyao's gold-rimmed feather robe, she looked like a fairy who was untainted by dust. At this time, at the entrance of the mountain, Li Shimin, Zhang Sun Wugo sat in the sedan and greeted Zhang Feng. It could be considered as sending him off. Wei Zheng and the others also greeted Zhang Feng one after another. When they reached the mountain entrance, Zhang Feng brought the two women out of the carriage. He cupped his hands to everyone and said, "Everyone, there is no need to send me off. This time, it's either success or death. I, Zhang Feng, don't believe that the football and basketball I made can't beat him." Then, Zhang Feng waved his hand. Li Qingqian and the others, who were wearing strange clothes and wanted to go crazy, lowered their heads and faces, red, followed Zhang Feng hurriedly ran down the mountain. In these 3 days' time, Zhang Feng secretly went down the mountain once and found Cripple Wang. He instructed him to make the football uniform. Then, he let Niu Weili use official means to buy 15 sets of leather armor from the army. Overnight, he modified them into the red and white uniform that Zhang Feng wanted. The number 1 to 15 was painted in white paint on the chest. There was also a strange number on the back. However, above this number, there were 4 words that everyone could recognize. White Deer College. Every mid-autumn hunt was held in Lantian. This was a natural place for hunting. It was vast and sparsely populated. The scenery was beautiful. Although it had experienced the erosion of the locust plague, but in this 1 month's time, under the nourishment of the autumn rain, the horn of life was once again in full bloom. The group of people went out of the range of Shao Mountain and headed west. As long as they followed the official road by the Wei River, the next town that appeared would be Lantian. Along the way, because there was only 1 day's time, they met up with the people from the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Rights at the Wei River Bridge. After completing the registration, they leisurely walked towards Lantian. Along the way, they spent another 2 days. In these 2 days, they were basically students from the 2 major colleges, plus students from the 4 major colleges of Hongwen and Chang and University. They also hunted together, cooked together, and so on. There was nothing wrong with other things. 2 days' time passed in a flash. 2 days later, Zhang Feng stood in the middle of an open field and looked around. Li Qingqian smiled and asked, "You're looking for Erpi Gully, right?" Zhang Feng asked in surprise, "Is it here?" Li Qingqian nodded. Hearing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly squatted on the ground and looked at the stones on the ground. Almost took one. "Come over and dig it up to see if there was a coal mine below." Seeing this, Li Qingqian hurriedly dissuaded him. "You'd better stop. As far as I know, this is Urpi Gully, but it doesn't mean that this place is full of coal mines, right? I've already sent someone to inform Old Nyo. Perhaps Old Nyo will come over at night. You should prepare first. We'll depend on you later. Zhang Feng still didn't understand what Li Qingqian meant. Beside a river in the open field between two mountains, rows of tables and chairs were already placed. The students participating in the mid-autumn hunt were all standing upright in their respective colleges' seats. White Deer College and Chang and University stood in their respective seats. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to ask, a boy servant from the Ministry of Works glared at Zhang Feng with a sullen face and complained, "Seeing that this is your first time participating in the mid-autumn hunt, we'll let you off this time. Why aren't you going over quickly? We're waiting for you in the mid-autumn hunt." Chapter 981. Mid-Autumn Hunt. To a certain extent, it was just a formality to let the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights know what the students had learned in the past year. The most important thing was to get the outstanding students of the college to meet the people from the two departments first. To put it bluntly, it was to let the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights record the top talents in their notebooks first and then report to the emperor. After the imperial examinations 3 years later, the emperor would personally check the papers of these people. The high scholars were basically selected from these people. However, this was not necessarily the case. This was because every year, there would be many people who were hidden away by the college for some reason. They would only be released during the imperial examinations to amaze the world. This was also Zhang Feng's plan. Now, there were so many people eyeing Chang and University and White Deer College. If these people were released at this time, what would happen? The opening of the mid-autumn hunt was similar to the sports events in the future. First, the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights would praise the emperor. Then, they would encourage all the students and so on. After that, the chancellors of the major colleges would go up to give a speech. Since the chancellors of White Deer College and Chang and University were both Zhang Feng and this time, the Imperial College and Hongwenguan were on the same side, things were easier to handle. Originally, it was the Imperial College's turn to give a speech. Zhang Feng was prepared to study what these people were talking about. After all, he did not understand these things. It would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. However, this time, the people from the Imperial College knew how to have fun. The two deans stood up at the same time. They smiled at Zhang Feng and said, "We have long heard that young Master Zhang is brimming with talent. Furthermore, there are countless amazing poems that have spread throughout the world. However, these are only one-sided. As everyone knows, as the dean of an academy and the chancellor, this is not only reflected in the Tao of poetry, but also in the Book of Songs and Etiquette. Although you invited the 4 great Confucians up the mountain, we do not know what methods you used. But if you want us to believe you, it's still a little difficult." At the Hongwenguan, a fat man wearing a white robe embroidered with a large character smiled and stroked his mustache. "Brother Sun, you're making things difficult for her. President Zhang is a newcomer." "Oh right, she's a great Confucian scholar who was jointly recommended by the 4 great Confucian scholars. We have to be careful with what we say." Qing Chumo and the others who were listening below were enraged. They almost wanted to beat them up, but they were still firmly held down by Li Qingqian. He knew that these 2 grandsons were going to be unlucky. Zhang Feng laughed coldly and patted Zhang Yuyao's and Jingshu's hands, who were trembling slightly. He got up and threw a punch at the 2 of them, as well as the 2 officials from the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Rights, who had been watching coldly from the side. This immediately made them frown slightly. If this was any other place, it wouldn't have mattered. But where was this place? This was the mid-autumn hunt, and the people who came were all literati. This kind of etiquette was simply a kind of contempt for them. However, the more Zhang Feng acted like this, the more the two people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan smiled. It seemed that the more outstanding Zhang Feng's performance was, the better it would be. Zhang Feng glanced at the two people and couldn't help but laugh. When the two people saw this, they were even happier. Prince Zhang, Lord Chancellor, please. Considering that you're the youngest great Confucian scholar in Chang and even the entire Tang Dynasty, I'll give you the opportunity to be the first to give a speech in this mid-autumn hunt. Zhang Feng asked with a smile, may I ask who you are? The Imperial College's Chancellor sneered and said, my surname is Sun, and my name is Yen Bo. I'm the Chancellor of the Imperial College, Grade 5. Oh, Yen Bo, hello. Are you sure you'll let me speak this time? Yen Bo was stunned. He didn't know what Zhang Feng meant, but he still nodded and said, let's begin. Let's not waste everyone's time. Since Brother Yen Bo has spoken, then this humble Zhang will speak a few words this time. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, I'm sure everyone knows about the Chang and University and White Deer College, right? The reason why I set up the college was to let the people of the Tang Dynasty escape from poverty. I believe that everyone has seen the incident caused by the locust plague. Let's not talk about what White Deer College did. These are all small matters. As long as it can benefit the people of the world, we'll do it. Let's not talk about what the college did for now. Let's talk about, wait. The guy's surname Sun couldn't stand Zhang Feng anymore. He hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng and said, President Zhang, this is the mid-autumn hunt. Let's talk about the mid-autumn hunt. Zhang Feng curled his lips and said again, the reason why I set up the college was to let the people of the Tang Dynasty be illiterate. What I want to say is that as long as you're not blind, you can see that in the Tang Dynasty, from the opening of the waterway trade route, to the emergence of the salt-making technique, to the trade with Jinla, these are the foundations that made the Tang Dynasty grow stronger day by day. Think about it, what does a strong country need? What it needs is more people who can read. Don't ask me why I want everyone to be literate. Look at how many barbarian merchants there are during this period. If all of us are the same as before, how can we continue to do business? What does being illiterate mean? It's a matter of a country's reputation. What does a strong country need first? Of course, it's national strength. How can a country's national strength be strong? This involves one of the most basic things of Tao, and that is culture. Culture is the soul of a country. If you want everyone to believe in you, it's not about how many troops you have or how strong your military power is, but how many literate people there are in your country. This is the face of a country. I've calculated it once before. The ratio of literate people to illiterate people in the Tang Dynasty is 100:1. That is to say, only 1 person in 100 may be literate. But this literacy is only in the literal sense. Why is that? It's not that they don't want to, because everyone knows that reading is the best out of everything. But now, what do you see? At this time, the people in the field listened to Zhang Feng's words. They couldn't help but feel a little moved. Zhang Feng was right. When they came to study and learn how to read, wasn't it the same as what Zhang Feng said? Chapter 982. Zhang Feng spoke passionately, and the people standing below were even more mesmerized as they listened to him. Qing Chumo, who was familiar with Zhang Feng's temper, suddenly understood. Why did Li Qingqian not let him speak before? It turned out that this group of people wanted to show off again. This was simply, when would Lao Tzu be like Feng Zi? That would be great. At this moment, the people from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights, and Ministry of Personnel were all stunned. What was wrong with what Zhang Feng said? Although it was not as cliché as what everyone said before, Zhang Feng's face was flushed red as he spoke. He was so excited that he was almost dancing with joy. As for the students present, they were all fired up by Zhang Feng's words. It was to the point that they were almost ready to jump into action the moment Zhang Feng said what he wanted to do. The people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan felt uncomfortable at this moment. Their faces were full of discomfort as if they had eaten feces. Their expressions were as uncomfortable as they could be. Zhang Yuyao, who was behind Zhang Feng, almost stood up to cheer Zhang Feng. Jingshu's eyes were also full of splendor. Our great Tang dynasty has heroes all over the world. If everyone had a tolerant heart, then our Tang dynasty would not be bullied by others. Since the era of Emperor Qin, look at our martyrs. Which one of them did not straighten their backs and work tirelessly for the rise of our Han people and culture? Emperor Qin unified the 6 states, forged a unified currency, and unified the written language. The Hanwu dynasty was famous around the world for the prestige of our Han people. There was once a classic famous sentence. Do you remember? Those who offend our Han people will be killed no matter how far away they are. What is this? This is the first time we, the Han people, straightened our backs and let everyone in the world see us, the yellow-skinned and black-haired descendants of the Yellow Emperor, stand up. But what about now? Turn around and take a look. Our emperor has created an unprecedented civil and martial arts system. He has also held an unprecedented imperial examination system. Of course, this imperial examination was not created by our emperor, but it was only implemented in our era. Our emperor has created an unprecedented way of spreading the word. This achievement is comparable to Qin Huang and Emperor Wu of Han. And look at the current cooperative, and so on. What are these? These are all for our emperor to straighten our back of the Tang dynasty, deter the foreigners, and prevent our people from being bullied. Take a look at all of you. Some people are cutting their way through this path, but there are even more people who are looking at the sea and sighing. But I want to say that it's all pretentious. If you don't act, you won't die. Right now, His Majesty wants to improve, to surpass the Qin Emperor and Emperor Wu of Han. But in the vast country of the Great Tang, there are countless illiterates, and many people are starving. Last year, His Majesty signed the Wei River Treaty in humiliation, killing the White Horse. Why? This is all for the sake of our Tang dynasty's people not to be bullied. What can we do about this? We have to shoulder this heavy burden and contribute to the rise of the Great Tang. That's why some people say that my White Deer Academy is dancing on the brink of death. There are even some people who say that if I pay a little bit of my master's money and find a master, not only will I be able to learn a thing or two, I'll even be able to earn a little bit of money. There are also people who say that your academy is breaking the rules and that the academy needs to charge a high fee to show its status. However, in my opinion, all of this is bullshit. Whether a person is high or not depends on whether he works hard, studies hard, and achievements. Relying on the heavens, relying on the earth, relying on relationships, and relying on parents. What are those? Those are all cowards. In my opinion, such people don't deserve to learn the sage path of Confucius. They should just eat and wait for death. Learn what? Eat and wait for death. Isn't that good? The more Zhang Feng spoke, the more agitated he became. He even said all the things that he wanted to say. This time, Zhang Feng didn't just say it for the students present and the people from the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Officials, and the Ministry of Rights. He mainly said it for the large number of people outside and the students who were preparing to enter the college in advance to watch the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Every year, the Mid-Autumn Hunt was a show of the country's desire for talents and grace. It was also a time for the country to identify talents in advance. It was also a time for the major colleges to prepare to recruit talents. Because at this moment, all the men of the right age in the Tang dynasty and the surrounding areas would come wave after wave. Even a month ago, they came to watch the hunt. This was the time to show whether the college was strong or not. It was also the time to decide whether the college would be able to recruit top talents in the next 3 years. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Feng's speech, a loud voice shouted from the top of the mountain in the distance, "Good. Well said. If one is to be President Zhang, one might as well go home and raise pigs." "President Zhang, does White Deer College still want people?" President Zhang said it so well. "One more. One more. One more. One more." Chapter 983. At this moment, Li Qingqian and the others couldn't help but be stunned as they looked at the boiling scene. Although they already knew about Zhang Feng's abilities, how could they have imagined that Zhang Feng's words would cause such a stir? The people from the Imperial College, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Hongwen Guan were also stunned. They had never seen such an opening speech before. They were simply here to snatch people away. Some of them couldn't help but start to panic. However, at this moment, the official from the Ministry of Personnel scanned the sea of people and saw Li Qingqian and the others. Although Li Qingqian and the others were disguised, they often moved around the palace and knew a lot about the situation in the palace. They had naturally seen the current emperor and the crown prince. Although this person looked similar to the crown prince, Li Qingqian was the crown prince. No one could imitate his aura. Therefore, when the official from the Ministry of Personnel saw Li Qingqian, he couldn't help but stand there in a daze, as though he had been struck by lightning. Oh my God, could this be the crown prince? He had long heard that the White Deer Institute was established by the crown prince, and this Zhang Feng was merely a dean under the crown prince. Could it be that this was all true? The official from the Ministry of Personnel couldn't be sure. He hurriedly pulled on a good friend from the Ministry of Works and asked, "Lord He, do you think that person looks like someone from the palace?" The official from the Ministry of Works frowned slightly and wanted to refute. However, when he looked in the direction his friend was looking, he also frowned slightly. He also saw Li Qingqian, who was dressed in white. Although he looked delicate and pretty, he couldn't tell anything about him. Due to their identities, Li Qingqian and the others were meticulously disguised every time they went out. Therefore, although everyone could tell something from his refined movements and expressions, if they didn't interact with Li Qingqian and the others often, even their childhood playmates wouldn't be able to recognize him, let alone outsiders. At this time, official He from the Ministry of Work stared at the official from the Ministry of Personnel in shock and said, "I say, old Qian, are you blind from old age? Wasn't the crown prince always in the palace? Moreover, wasn't it said that he had been helping the emperor deal with some important political matters? How could he have the time to come here and fool around? Besides, the laws of the Tang Dynasty." Without waiting for him to finish, the official from the Ministry of Appointments, old Qian, waved his hand with a pale face and whispered into his ear, "Have you not heard the rumors in the palace?" "What rumors?" Master, he couldn't help but ask. "That's right. I've heard people say that His Majesty and the dukes would often leave the palace in disguise. Moreover, White Deer College seems to have been set up by His Majesty and the others. Even retired Emperor is the honorary Vice Dean of White Deer College." When Lord He heard this, his frown deepened. As a rank 4 official of the Ministry of Works, he knew some things in great detail. However, when he heard his old friend say this, he couldn't help but frown. After thinking about it carefully, he heaved a deep sigh of relief. He patted the shoulder of the official from the Ministry of Personnel. "Old Qian, I'm telling you the truth. You're too nervous. If these things were true, why didn't Lord Zhangsun tell us? No matter what, we're an urgent department. If these things were true, why didn't we receive any news?" During this period of time, His Majesty and the Crown Prince have been terribly busy because of Chang'an's economy and the market at the foot of Shao Mountain. In addition, Jinna's request for help has kept them busy. How could they have the time to leave the palace? Think about it carefully. Is Lord Zhongsun in the palace or the Ministry of Personnel every day? Have you heard about Lord Zhongsun leaving the palace? Moreover, you said that retired emperor is the vice dean of White Deer College. Aren't you thinking too much? The relationship between His Majesty and retired emperor has just improved. Why would retired emperor come out to mess around? Lord, he patted the shoulder of the official with the surname Qian and smiled confidently. Old Qian, you're really ignorant. This is what retired emperor values the most. Do you think retired emperor will break his own rules and do this kind of thing? Do you think His Majesty and Empress will allow him to do this? Hearing this, the official with the surname Qian from the Ministry of Personnel heaved a deep sigh of relief. Indeed, the rules established by the retired emperor stated that no member of the royal clan was allowed to use any form to side with anyone. Although the rumors about the White Deer Academy were getting more and more ridiculous, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't believe that the retired emperor would do such a thing. Hearing Lord He's words, Lord Qian's complexion turned slightly better. The gaze he used to look at Li Qingqian and the others was no longer that respectful. Now that you've said it, it seems that I was really a bit too nervous. However, look at this brat's mouth, he really knows how to talk. Lord He glanced at Zhang Feng, who was talking incessantly and passionately, and nodded speechlessly. At this moment, Zhang Feng didn't notice, but Li Qingqian and the others had already noticed the abnormalities of the officials. Chapter 984. Just as Li Qingqian was pondering whether or not he should react, he saw the two of them whispering to each other before looking at him. They actually just ignored him. Li Qingqian couldn't help but let out a deep sigh of relief. These two sly old foxes were the main participants of this mid-autumn hunt. Furthermore, he had met them a few times in the palace and had also met them a few times in the morning court. If their identities were to be exposed now, it would create a huge hole in his reputation. Fortunately, these two idiots were old and dim-sighted and didn't recognize him. However, this was also a warning to Li Qingqian. If he wanted to hide his identity for a long time, it wouldn't be enough to disguise himself. He didn't understand why his imperial father wanted to bury those things. What would happen if he directly told Zhang Feng? Would that brat be scared to death? At this moment, Zhang Feng's speech came to an end. The administrators from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights, and Ministry of Personnel hurriedly walked forward and invited Zhang Feng down. They really didn't dare to let Zhang Feng continue speaking. They seriously suspected that this brat would continue speaking until the sky turned dark. The three officials waved their hands at the students, indicating for all of the students and the excited commoners to quiet down. Only then did they say, "What Principal Zhang said is extremely correct. It is just as Confucius once said, education is without discrimination." This is more or less the case. However, due to the time constraints right now, we will no longer pursue these matters, nor will we research these matters. If, without waiting for the official to finish speaking, he hurriedly waved his hand and shouted, "This matter isn't urgent. Once this mid-autumn hunt is over, Lantian County is very close to my White Deer College. At that time, I'll invite everyone to my White Deer College as guests. It just so happens that the braised meat, beggar's chicken, and beer were all invented by my White Deer College. At that time, I'll invite everyone to the mountain for a taste. How about it?" After Zhang Feng finished speaking, he added, "Everything will be free." Zhang Feng's words instantly caused a huge wave of cheers. At this moment, the officials from the three parties had already opened their mouths, but they didn't know what to say. You said to refuse, but how could you refuse now? At this time, it was no longer a question of whether they wanted to go or not. The key was that Zhang Feng directly took drastic measures to deal with them, directly blocking their way. The students had no choice but to go. The three of them could only cup their fists at Zhang Feng with a fake smile, indicating that they would talk about it after the autumn harvest. Then, they hurriedly announced the official start of the autumn harvest. Actually, the sales were very simple. The first step was to have the students of the various academies have an academic exchange. To put it bluntly, it was to build relationships and brag. A group of people gathered together. Whoever said the winner would be the winner. Regarding this, Zhang Feng was not afraid of him. Needless to say, Chang'an University was full of stubborn people recruited by Qintinyu's people. Among the stubborn people who grew up in Chang'an City, who could be ranked first in terms of talking? As for Qintinyu, the corners of Zhang Feng's mouth curled up slightly, and he mourned for all the students present for a second. Fortunately, this academic exchange lasted for 3 days. Zhang Feng had nothing to do, so he talked with the chancellor of the Hongwen Guan and the Imperial College for a while. However, basically, they were full of sarcasm and even wanted to get to the bottom of things. However, these people also knew that they couldn't win against Zhang Feng in terms of talking. In the end, they could only run away. After that, there was a 3-party meeting with the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights, which was a little difficult to handle. Fortunately, Zhang Feng had Jing Shu with him. Although Zhang Feng didn't understand these red tape, after watching Jing Shu's verbal battle with the heads of the 3 major departments, it really did bring a lot of help to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel excited and couldn't wait to hug and kiss Jing Shu on the spot. This kind of trivial matter finally ended after 3 days. 3 days later, it was still the same place. All the students stood straight, but the students from A, B, C, and D colleges were basically communicating with their eyes. Some were envious. Some were fearful. Some were unconvinced. And even more fearful. Those with discerning eyes could roughly see that Chang'an University and White Deer College obviously had the upper hand. As for the Hongwen Guan and Imperial College, these places were serious teaching places, and all of them were gentle and refined. Who could compete with the big and burly Chang'an University and White Deer College, these weirdos? At this time, in the Hongwen Guan and Imperial College, there were some students with obvious bruises and scars on their faces. When they looked at Qintinyu and the others, their bodies trembled from time to time. Obviously, they were taken care of by these stubborn people. On the other hand, Qing Chumo and the others looked straight ahead, solemnly looking at Zhang Feng and the others in front of them, as if they were not aware of those gazes. This made the Hongwen Guan and the Dean of Imperial College gnash their teeth in anger. But there was nothing they could do. Zhang Feng had always been supportive. If words were not enough, then they had to rely on their fists. If your fists don't work, then you're F*King useless. Get the F*CK out. Obviously, Qin Chumo and the others had learned Zhang Feng's true teachings, and they did not disappoint Zhang Feng. At this time, how could the leaders of the 3 major departments not see through this? But they could only sigh helplessly and announce, "Everyone." It seems that everyone is quite satisfied with this year's autumn hunt. Since everyone has exchanged knowledge, let's move on to the second segment. Do you see the forest behind me? The 4 academies, A, B, C, and D, will all be separated into several small teams. Each team will have 5 people. Chapter 985. Every team must bring back 5 praise before sunset today. This will be considered as an important part of the autumn tree hunt this time. As for those who don't bring back 5 praise or didn't hunt any praise, 1 point will be deducted from them. And this time, the total number of students participating in the autumn hunt from each academy will be evaluated and ranked after the hunt is over. As for the academy with the lowest ranking, it will be directly eliminated. You all know what will happen 3 years later, so I won't say anything more. As for the remaining 3 academies, they will conduct the final round of Dao discussion among the students, and the most outstanding academies of this year will be determined. Similarly, the Mid-Autumn Hunt will be judged based on points. The previous 3 days of academic exchange can also be used to familiarize each other. After 3 days of practice, the old man believes that all of you should be familiar with each other. Then, the old man announces the official start of the hunt. The most important part of the Mid-Autumn Hunt had finally arrived. The number of participants for the Mid-Autumn Hunt this time was originally planned to be 30 from each academy. Zhang Feng had originally brought 30 people from each academy. However, these damn fellows actually said that Zhang Feng's academy was just established this year and didn't have enough people. Therefore, each academy could only have 15 people. This meant that the total number of people from Chang and University and White Deer College only added up to one academy's quota. This was also why Zhang Feng was more angry. After the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Appointments found out that these 2 academies were under Zhang Feng's name, they actually firmly believed that these 2 academies belonged to the same system. After all, the Chancellor and Dean of the academies were the same person. Zhang Feng didn't have any more anger. What else could he do? He could only pinch his nose and admit defeat. He originally thought that he could take advantage of this situation. However, from the looks of it now, it wasn't just taking advantage. Damn it, these bastards were definitely targeting him. Although he still occupied 2 spots of the academies at this time, which seemed to be a great bargain in the eyes of outsiders, but discerning people could see at a glance that other academies had 30 people in them. But what about his academy? Their purpose for doing so was evident at this moment, which was to prepare for the hunt. Hunting was also a test of a student's ability to survive and hunt in real life. It was a test of coordination between the hands, eyes, and brain. Furthermore, there were people from other academies monitoring them, so it would be difficult for them to cheat. The success or failure of the Mid-Autumn Hunt was mainly determined by points. At this moment, White Deer College and Chang and University were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. There was a huge gap in points between them and their opponents. If they wanted to win, they could only rely on their own abilities. Zhang Feng did not doubt the abilities of these guys. Although they were stubborn, it was not easy to enter the circle of stubborn people in Chang and City. These people were all second-generation heirs who had been abandoned by their families. They were proficient in eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, riding, and archery. This was also the reason why Zhang Feng had chosen them to come. As for White Deer College, although there were only 5 people including Tai Nyo, there was still Hao Chu-jun, Ma Zhou, Lai Ji, and the others. To put it nicely, they were just going through the motions. In terms of knowledge, they were just going through the motions. As for relying on them to hunt and snatch the championship from these people, Zhang Feng could only think about it. Which one of those who could afford to study didn't come from a well-off family? What about Ma Zhou, Lai Ji, and the others? To put it bluntly, they were all from bumpkins. The fact that they didn't kneel when they saw them was already due to Zhang Feng's good education. In ancient times, people were very particular about hierarchy. However, their purpose for coming here was to build up their self-confidence. Most importantly, they were here to maintain their reputation. After all, if the entire college was filled with a bunch of uncouth people, Zhang Feng would not be able to maintain his reputation. What would others think of him? After all, Chang and University was made up of stubborn students. When it came to keeping up appearances, Zhang Feng really didn't count on these people. Zhang Feng did not want to lose at this crucial moment. If he lost this competition, Zhang Feng would really lose everything. At this moment, the people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan School saw that Zhang Feng's expression was a little bad and could not help but secretly rejoice. They seemed to think that Zhang Feng must be feeling distressed because of this. Zhang Feng glanced at the two of them and did not say anything. At the command of Lord He from the Ministry of Works, a group of officials from the Ministry of Works carried a big box and appeared in front of the students of the 4 colleges. Inside the box was a dagger. The official from the Ministry of Appointments looked around with a solemn expression and said, "This hunt does not allow any injuries, deaths, or disappearances, especially those caused by people. If I find out that anyone dares to use brute force or violence, I have the right to expel them immediately and hand them over to the authorities for investigation. In the next 10 years, they are not allowed to appear in any college of the Tang Dynasty. Otherwise, they will bear the consequences." Chapter 986. After a series of warnings, Lord Qian of the Ministry of Appointments waved his hand impatiently and signaled the students to set off. Zhang Feng was too lazy to care about these things. Chen Tinu and the others were enough. With the influence and prestige of the 4 great demon kings, who dared to mess around, they could scare these people to death. Was there a need to do anything? Since there was nothing to do, Zhang Feng took Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu to stroll around Erpi Ridge. These 3 days, he was bored to death. Humans were also strange creatures. When they were busy, they wanted to be free, but once they were free, they would feel anxious. Although these 3 days were spent listening to Jingshu's songs all day and the days were very comfortable, Zhang Feng was always a little unhappy. Moreover, Zhang Feng had long wanted to go to Erpi Ditch to see what was going on with the coal mine and whether there was any progress. However, it did not seem to be the right time now. He simply took the 2 girls down the hill along the stream. While enjoying the beautiful scenery, he recited poems and couplets, which made the 2 girls laugh from time to time. "Fengzi, Fengzi, here, come quickly, I'm old Niu." Just as Zhang Feng took out a silk thread from his silk clothes and was about to weave a set of fishing gear, listen to music, and fish to live the life of an immortal, Niu Jinda sneaked out from the bushes not far ahead, and on his head was a straw hat made of leaves. At this time, he stuck his head out and greeted Zhang Feng. If Zhang Feng did not look carefully, he would not have recognized that this was Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda's appearance was so ugly that it could make children cry at night. At this time, Jing Shu and the other girl were so scared that their faces turned pale and their beautiful faces turned pale. After Zhang Feng confirmed that this person was Niu Jinda, he kept the Mitsubishi army knife in his arms and comforted the 2 girls. He stared at Niu Jinda and said, "Old Niu, it's broad daylight. Can you not scare people by pretending to be a ghost?" Zhang Feng's face darkened. He finally managed to get Zhang Yuyao to stop crying. He glared at Niu Jinda and said, "I've been here for 3 days. Why haven't I heard from you? Are you here to scare me? You're asking for a beating." Niu Jinda chuckled and emerged from the grass. He looked around and patted the dirt off his body. "I wanted to come out earlier, but isn't this to avoid arousing suspicion? If someone else finds out about this, it will be difficult for you to deal with this matter. Furthermore, the noses of the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Personnel are all dogs. If they catch wind of this matter, do you think we will have anything left to drink?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded. Niu Jinda was right. If these 2 bastards knew about the existence of the coal mine, they would not be able to get anything. Zhang Feng could not help but ask anxiously, "Did you find that thing?" "I found it. Let's find a quieter place and eat while we talk." Zhang Feng's head was full of question marks. "What the F***ck are you talking about while eating? So, you've already prepared this beforehand, haven't you?" With doubts, Zhang Feng held the 2 girls and followed Niu Jinda through the forest. After a while, they entered an open area. In the open area, there were 3 people who looked like servants. They were roasting a whole lamb over a charcoal fire. The whole lamb had been roasted like a pig. It was golden yellow and was still sizzling with oil. Zhang Feng's eyes widened at the sight. That's it. This was a beach protruding from the river. A thatched hut had been built in a hidden place in the beach. Zhang Feng could vaguely see some bedding and other things inside. It seemed that this was a sentry post of old Niu's men. Outside the sentry post, Zhang Feng could vaguely see 7 or 8 people holding sharp Immerse swords. They were on the trees or lying on the ground, staring at the surroundings like dead dogs. Niu Jinda pointed here as if showing off and said, "How is it? Ordinary people can't find this place, right? Come. I know you've suffered in the past 3 days. This is a wild goat caught in Erpi Ridge today. It's fat." As he spoke, Niu Jinda led the 3 of them to the roasted whole lamb that was being roasted. At this moment, the smell of the lamb mixed with cumin and pepper made Zhang Feng salivate. The premise was that old Niu had to take a bath first. Before they even entered, someone had already prepared a hastily made bamboo stool and a bamboo table by the side. After settling the 2 girls down, Zhang Feng looked at the roasted whole lamb. On the side of the roasted whole lamb, there were 3 roasted fishes that were being casually flipped. Zhang Feng was speechless. Zhang Feng was about to vomit after eating so much lamb. However, when he saw the fishes, his eyes started to shine. He pulled the 2 girls and went forward without saying anything. He searched for wild onions and fresh ginger by the river. After a while, Zhang Feng picked up a broken pottery jar that was still intact from the river and poured some chopped onions into it. He poured some ginger juice into a bowl and drizzled it on the roasted fish. In an instant, the smell of the roasted fish exploded. After that, Zhang Feng rummaged in his arms for a while and took out bottles and jars. He smeared them on the fish for a while. Then, he chased away the 3 people who were roasting the whole lamb inside. This lamb is a proper lamb. However, after being messed with by you guys, it's completely ruined. Our lives are tough. For the sake of my stomach, let me do it. Niu Jinda had been looking forward to it for a long time. He was waiting for Zhang Feng to say that. When Zhang Feng said that, Niu Jinda grinned and handed the dagger in his hand to Zhang Feng. "Here's the dagger. You do it." Chapter 987. Zhang Feng didn't bother to pay attention to Niu Jinda. After all, this rare picnic made Zhang Feng miss his college life. Niu Jinda looked at the mutton while thinking. Niu Jinda's eyes were fixed. He kicked all the guards out to look for the wild onions and wild ginger that Zhang Feng had just found. Someone even sneaked into the mid-autumn hunt camp and stole a big pot. He twisted all these things into ginger juice and handed it to Zhang Feng. When half a pot of ginger juice was poured down, there was a burst of sizzling sound on the charcoal fire. The rank odor of the roasted whole lamb was covered by the thick ginger juice. In an instant, the tempting fragrance of the mutton overflowed again. Niu Jinda swallowed his saliva. Zhang Feng could only roll his eyes. In the end, even Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu stared at the golden roasted fish and roasted whole lamb and drooled. Zhang Feng had no choice but to put down the whole roasted lamb in his hand. He twisted a handful of onions and put them on the roasted fish. He roasted them on the fire and handed them to the 3 of them. However, there were only 3 fish. At this time, Niu Jinda looked at the roasted fish in the hands of Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao and Zhang Feng with a stuttering face. Zhang Yuyao was shy and handed the roasted fish in her hand to Niu Jinda with a red face. This Niu Jinda was simply transformed from an animal. After catching the fish, under the dumbfounded gazes of Zhang Feng and the others, he swallowed the fish in big mouthfuls. Zhang Feng was horrified to find that this guy didn't even chew. He just swallowed it directly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng felt a toothache. He was afraid that this old guy would be choked by the fish bones and couldn't breathe. But fortunately, Zhang Feng really underestimated Niu Jinda's appetite. After swallowing the roasted fish that was more than a caddy in his hand, Niu Jinda looked at the bottles and jars that Zhang Feng put on the ground. While Zhang Feng was eating the roasted fish, he poured the rest of the condiments onto the mutton, imitating Zhang Feng's actions. However, after doing so, Zhang Feng's bottles and jars were completely empty. A spicy smell and a strong smell of cumin filled the air, causing Zhang Feng to seriously doubt whether the whole roasted mutton that had turned from golden to black was poisonous or not. However, when Zhang Feng saw that Niu Jinda was actually sucking his fingers, and then secretly cutting his flesh with a blade to eat, Zhang Feng was so disgusted that he almost threw up last night's meal. Looking at the ground, what frightened Zhang Feng the most was that there was at least a caddy of salt in the gourd-shaped bottle that was as big as a fist, but this guy actually poured all of it. This old guy actually poured all of it on the roasted whole lamb. Wouldn't that kill people? After Zhang Feng and the other two pointed to their stomachs and said that they couldn't eat anymore, Niu Jinda happily held the roasted whole lamb and tore off a hind leg, chewing it in big mouthfuls. Seeing this, Zhang Yuyao's face turned pale. It wasn't until he finished eating the leg that Niu Jinda wiped his greasy mouth and said, "Boy, we really got lucky this time." Even though Zhang Feng was prepared, when he heard Niu Jinda's words at this time, he was really confused and asked, "What? What? You asked me what?" The Erpi ditch you mentioned is simply a great gift from the heavens to the Tang Dynasty. When we first came here, we really didn't know where to find this thing, but fortunately, there was a burst of autumn rain before. After a long drought and a good rain, there was actually a landslide in this mountain. Guess what? As her body slid down, a black mass was instantly revealed. "That's coal," Niu Jinda said with exultation, and the beard on his mouth was dancing. "In the end, I sent someone to investigate the situation and guess what? Good heavens, the whole mountain was filled with King coal. Brother, if we didn't get lucky, what is this?" Zhang Feng was also a little shocked, although he faintly felt that there was indeed coal reserves in Lantian. Moreover, it had already been mined since the Song Dynasty. There was no way to trace back the specific time of mining. However, from the conversation between the few of them, he could be sure of one thing, and that was, in the beginning of the Tang Dynasty, this era had not yet discovered a place to live, so it was really unclear whether there was coal in this mountain or not. However, Zhang Feng knew that this Lantian coal field was a super big coal mine that was said to not be emptied within 100 years. One had to know that this had been mined for more than 1,000 years before. Even so, it was not emptied. It could be imagined that this time, they really hit the jackpot. However, at this time, this had nothing to do with Zhang Feng. He hurriedly asked, "Tell me, why has there been no news during this time, and no news has been sent back to me? Did you encounter the Taiyuan Wang clan again and get into trouble?" When Niu Jinda heard this, the smile on his face disappeared. Even the lamb leg in his hand was no longer fragrant. He smacked his lips and nodded. "You're right, this time we are indeed being watched, but those people still don't know about this. This time, they seem to have brought some people from the direction of Taiyuan to prepare to come over. It seems that they also heard the rumors and want to thoroughly explore this place. But fortunately, I, old Niu, am smart. After discovering that there is coal here, I directly went to the Lantian County Magistrate and bought all of this second batch of coal. Therefore, at this time, there is some entanglement between us and them. After all, there is something that we don't dare to spread. Otherwise, with Lao Tzu's character, he would have already pressed him to the ground and beaten him up. However, the more we obstruct them, the more they seem to be really angry, and they want to go in no matter what. Therefore, during this time, in order to not blow this matter up, I didn't dare to dig up the news and spread it out. Just 3 days ago, I heard that you guys came, so I took the time to prepare to spread the news. However, there is a problem here, and that is, the people from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Appointments, and Ministry of Rights don't seem to be honest. I have a premonition that one of these three must be related to the Wang clan. Otherwise, why would the people from the Taiyuan Wang clan come here during the mid-autumn hunt? Moreover, they want to bring more than 500 people in to explore. Therefore, I feel that there is something fishy about this. Chapter 988. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's face turned gloomy. Judging from the recent series of events, Zhang Feng really didn't think that this matter was related to the 5 families and 7 factions. After all, Zhang Feng didn't want to offend these people at this time. However, if the Taiyuan Wang clan was involved, then the matter would become complicated and confusing. If you said that the Guanlong group was targeting Zhang Feng, then Zhang Feng could still explain it. However, this Taiyuan Wang clan, damn it. Lao Tzu didn't even provoke you. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to muddy the waters? But how are you going to muddy the waters? What benefits are there? After all, no one knew about the things in the mountains. It was just a rumor. If Lao Tzu hadn't transmigrated, Lao Tzu wouldn't have known that there was such a thing in this poor village. It seemed that these people were really here for the mid-autumn hunt. In the end, Zhang Feng could only link the final outcome of this matter to the mid-autumn hunt. If Zhang Feng failed in the mid-autumn hunt, then they had 100 reasons to kill Zhang Feng here. In order to be safe, they had to make preparations in advance. On one hand, they had to try their best to delay Zhang Feng's victory. On the other hand, they had to make use of their convenience in the palace to reduce the number of people that Zhang Feng could bring to the lowest level. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile coldly. Do you think that you are the only ones who are prepared? Do you believe that Lao Tzu and the others will give you a big gift? When he had asked Old Cow to come over, Zhang Feng had a faint premonition. That was because the mid-autumn hunt was basically held in Nantian County every year. Although the location was different, the general location was within Lantian County. Furthermore, after knowing that there was a coal mine in Lantian County and that there were people from the Wang clan operating there, Zhang Feng combined the Imperial College, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights and Ministry of Works to trip him up from time to time. Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of something else. Sure enough, Old Ox's words allowed Zhang Feng to connect the dots. Zhang Feng quickly asked, Old Ox, how many people did you bring this time? Old Ox's words made Zhang Feng think of something else. Niu Jinda shook his head and said, not many, probably less than 200 people. But you can rest assured that these 200 people are all experts. This time, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel relieved. However, a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He hooked his finger and whispered into Niu Jinda's ear, if you can get some people out, you can immediately bring this matter back to the Academy's smelting workshop. They should be able to rush out a few hundred Mitsubishi military knives within 3 days. Get your people to bring these things over and be prepared to fight with these people at any time. Now that she heard this, she was shocked. Fengzi, are you going to completely fall out with those aristocratic families at this time? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. I'm not stupid. Why would I provoke them at this time? But I heard from Niu Weili, who is also the Chang'an County Magistrate, that he was the County Magistrate of Lantian County for a few years. He said that there are many groups of bandits in Lantian County. As Lantian County hadn't been affected before, he didn't send troops to seize them. But you said that if during the mid-autumn hunt or when these people want to take action. Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Niu Jinda's eyes instantly lit up. Good plan. This is simply a good plan. I understand, I'll do it now. As for the other things, I don't know, so I'll leave them to you. As long as you say something, I've already sent my right-hand man to ambush you. As for the rest of the things, not to mention more than 500 people, even if they send 10,000 people, old Niu will not take them seriously. Zhang Feng smiled and shook his head. But he didn't say anything. And these people, Zhang Feng was just preparing a backup plan. After all, this coal mine was related to Chang'an. This time, if the coal mine was exposed, these people in old Niu's hands would be the most powerful backing to guard this coal mine. As for these people wanting to take action, Zhang Feng really wanted to see what these people wanted to do. This is one of the things. There's one more thing. Help me pass a message to Mr. Boucher. Tell him to prepare for the mid-autumn hunt invitation. Tell them to speed up their training. At most 10 days, at least 5 days, we will definitely return to the academy. Although Niu Jinda didn't know what the Mitsubishi bayonet and what he meant by preparation, he still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He waved to a person beside him and then nodded. In an instant, that person slowly dived into the river and quietly disappeared in front of everyone, leaving no trace. At this time, Niu Jinda asked, "Fengzi, let me ask you something. You have to tell me honestly. What's the relationship between us? If you have something to say, just say it." Zhang Feng gritted his teeth with the thin bamboo stick while looking at Niu Jinda. But at this time, Niu Jinda was looking at Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "Just say it. We're a family. There's nothing to hide." Although Zhang Feng's words were very normal and natural, listening to the two girls' ears, there was another layer of meaning. Niu Jinda couldn't help but stare at the two girls with his eyes wide open. The way he stared at the two girls changed. It seemed that he wanted to see something different from the two girls. Could it be that this guy suddenly changed his personality and took these two girls? Chapter 989. At this time, Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu's faces were red from embarrassment. Jingshu was wearing a veil, so nothing could be seen. However, from the way she gripped Zhang Feng's hand, it could be seen that her heart wasn't calm. As for Zhang Yuyao, who didn't know how to hide her thoughts, it was needless to say. Her beautiful eyes were twinkling like little stars. Niu Jinda looked at Zhang Feng with a smile that wasn't a smile. He coughed and asked, "What exactly is this Mitsubishi bayonet you were talking about? How come I've never heard of it before? Can you tell me in detail what this thing is used for? Don't tell me this thing is the invincible spear you were talking about." Hearing this, Zhang Feng instantly felt a headache. How should he describe this thing? It would be endless to talk about it, but since he had nothing to do now, Zhang Feng could only tell Niu Jinda the whole story of the Mitsubishi bayonet. After touching his chest, Zhang Feng finally took out the thing from his chest. In Zhang Feng's chest was an exquisitely made Mitsubishi bayonet. Not only was it equipped with a handle, but Zhang Feng also used his own knowledge and ergonomics to add some other things into it. Therefore, not only could it be fitted perfectly with a firearm, it could also become a perfect weapon when held in the hand. The 3 blood-draining troughs had already been painted with bright red paint. Coupled with the crisscrossing striped grooves and the cold glinting 3-sided edge, Niu Jinda stared at the Mitsubishi bayonet and felt a chill down his spine. Although Zhang Feng didn't want the two girls to see this thing, he didn't think too much about it. However, at this time, Niu Jinda was staring at the thing in Zhang Feng's hand. "Fengzi, this is the Mitsubishi bayonet. This thing doesn't look like a sword, nor a dagger, nor a saber. Is this thing really useful?" After a moment of excitement and anticipation, Niu Jinda couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was not angry. Instead, he looked at Niu Jinda with a mocking expression and threw the Mitsubishi knife in his hand to him. "Do you see that tree? Go and try it. Niu Jinda was speechless and a little disappointed. He tossed the military knife in his hand. This thing was not as sharp as his axe. It was as light as a firewood stick in his hand. He seriously doubted the use of this thing. However, Zhang Feng had already said so, and even revealed a sly smile. Niu Jin could not help but be alarmed. Once this brat revealed such a despicable expression, something big was bound to happen. He still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He waved the Mitsubishi knife in his hand and casually stabbed at the pine tree that was as thick as a washbasin. But this time, it didn't matter. The next moment, Niu Jinda was instantly stunned. Although it was said to be a casual stab, he still used a little bit of strength. After all, this thing had a sharp edge, so no matter what, it would still leave a mark on the tree. But what he never expected was that his ordinary stab actually caused the 5-inch-long Mitsubishi military knife to sink more than half into the tree trunk. At this moment, Niu Jinda's eyes couldn't help but fiercely shrink. Even the hair on his body stood up. He asked in astonishment, "Fengzi, you, tell me honestly. This plaything, is this plaything the one you mentioned before, the one that can break through anything?" Before he finished, Zhang Feng hurriedly made a shushing gesture and said with a smile, "It is the thing I said." Hiss. Well, Niu Jinda heard this and couldn't help but take a deep breath. He didn't believe it and pulled the Mitsubishi knife out of the trunk. Then, he used all his strength to stab at the trunk. But the next moment, an even more terrifying scene appeared. At this time, under his full concentration, he only felt that it was as easy as piercing through the body of a lamb. This Mitsubishi knife would definitely sink into the trunk. Niu Jinda's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng to the side and pointed at the Mitsubishi knife. He asked, "Brat, tell me honestly. Tell me what this thing can do. Don't be so wishy-washy, okay? Believe it or not, Lao Tzu will beat you up if you annoy him." Zhang Feng crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with incomparable arrogance, "You want to know?" But when he saw Niu Jinda's murderous eyes, Zhang Feng shrunk his neck and said, "Actually, this thing's function is not only that. Did you see the 3 red grooves on it? In fact, that thing is used for bleeding. If it pierces an animal or a human body, then these 3 grooves and the 3 blades will continuously cause the person to bleed, making the wound unable to heal. And you see the crisscrossing holes on the Mitsubishi knife. These will completely destroy the muscle tissue of the injured area. Therefore, under normal circumstances, this thing must not be left outside. Once this thing falls into the hands of the enemy, you can imagine the consequences." Previously, when we were in the smelter, Old Chin had already tested it. He got a set of Mingguang armor from who knows where, that set of Mingguang armor that was worn by generals in the army. Guess what the result was? With my strength, I can easily pierce through the hardest part of the breastplate. If I stab him 3 times in one breath, do you think? Zhang Feng did not finish his words, but the rest of the words did not need to be said. Niu Jinda held the Mitsubishi knife tightly in his hand, but Niu Jinda mercilessly snatched it from his hand. "You want it? Who the hell doesn't want it?" Niu Jinda asked back. Zhang Feng did not hesitate to put the thing into his arms. He held his head indifferently and turned around to lead the 2 women slowly out of the forest. He said, "If you want it, send your confidant to quickly get this thing. If you are late, I can't guarantee that Lao Li or Old Chin will send the first batch to Chiuzi." Hearing this, how could Niu Jinda sit still? He hurriedly picked up a handful of stones from the ground and threw them in different directions. He shouted in a low voice, "What are you bastards waiting for? Hurry up and get this thing for Lao Tzu. If you are late, when you come back, Lao Tzu's legs will be removed." Chapter 990. Beside the waterfall of White Deer College. Yushernan and the other three sat around a stone table under a jujube tree. The poker cards on the stone table were still blown all over the place by the wind, but these did not attract their attention. Even the jujubes on the jujube tree, which were their favorite, could not make them happy. It seemed that ever since Zhang Feng left, the few of them had started to feel unhappy. It was as if they had something on their minds. At this moment, Sun Simiao, who had also hurried down the mountain with a basket of herbs on his back, saw the appearance of the few people, and a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He threw the empty basket of herbs on his back to the ground and sat down beside the few people, sighing. When this kid was here, he was quite annoying, but I didn't expect that after he left, I really couldn't bear to part with him. I wonder how he is doing in Lantian. Yushernan smiled bitterly and passed the teapot beside him to Sun Simiao. I heard that during this mid-autumn hunt, the Hongwen Guan and the Imperial College colluded to go against our White Deer College. Sigh. Ouyang Sun slammed the stone table. If I knew, we would have gone with them. If we went, old man would like to see what kind of tricks those guys can pull. At this moment, Shiva's unique voice sounded from afar. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly looked in the direction Shiva came from. After a while, Shiva hurriedly appeared beside them. Without waiting for him to catch his breath, Ouyang Sun hurriedly asked, "Did Feng Zi send a message?" Shiva first shook his head, then nodded. "It's a message from Erpi Ling, but it's not from Master. It's from Master Niu." Hearing that it was Niu Jinda, their eyes flashed. Ouyang Sun asked again, "Sit down and tell us slowly." Niu Jinda had been in Lantian for some time, but there had been no news. However, they also knew what Niu Jinda was doing. First of all, Niu Jinda had already met up with that kid. As for safety, with Niu Jinda around, who would dare to touch that kid? After Shiva recovered slightly, Ouyang Sun hurriedly said, "Hurry up and tell me, what happened to your teacher? How is the mid-autumn hunt going?" Shiva couldn't care less about their identities. After panting for a long time, he took out a letter and handed it to Ouyang Sun. There was a cow drawn on the cover of the letter. This was Niu Jinda's unique symbol for letters, especially since this cow only had one horn. In this world, other than Niu Jinda, no one else would draw a cow like this. Seeing this, their eyes lit up and they hurriedly opened the envelope. In the letter, he recounted everything that had happened to Zhang Feng at Erpi Ridge. Niu Jinda even bragged about the coal mine and Taiyuan Wang clan. They automatically filtered out Niu Jinda's bragging and mainly focused on Zhang Feng's part. When they saw that Zhang Feng was really targeted on the mountain, the old men who were over 50 years old slammed the table and threw the chairs in anger. When they saw how Zhang Feng had actually cleverly used the Imperial College in Hongwen to set up a trap, not to mention how he had cleverly ruined the scheme. He had even unrestrainedly promoted the teaching philosophy of White Deer College, causing everyone on the mountain to be fired up. The old men couldn't help but laugh heartily. Ha ha ha, old man knew that this grandson had the most wicked ideas. Who would have thought that these two sly old foxes would actually fall into the hands of that kid Zhang Feng? Awesome! How delightful! Isn't that so? I've already said that this kid doesn't like to be taken advantage of. If it weren't for the fact that we're already so old, do you think we would have been able to survive until now? Chu Suiliang glanced at Ouyang Sun and said, "Usually, aren't you the one who hates to see this kid the most?" Ouyang Sun stroked his beard and said without blushing or panting, "Old man, this is called beating people up. The more you like a talent, the harder you should beat him up. Jade won't become anything if it's not cut and polished." Ha ha ha. Fine, fine, fine. What you said makes sense. But what we should be concerned about now is how to make these people suffer again when they reach the mountain, right? Yushernan's voice fell. The old men's eyes flashed involuntarily. They gathered together like children and began to discuss with each other. Ouyang Sun took the lead and said, "Old man thinks that at this time, the football on the mountain is still not good enough. But think about it, this basketball is still very promising." That kid said this before. Coupled with the morning exercise, the old man thinks that this will be an unforgettable scene for these people. No. Yushernan knocked on the table and pointed to the letter and said, "Look, this kid has made such a big deal this time. If we follow the previous plan, it's very likely that we will lose face. Why don't we play a big game?" Ouyang Sun looked at Yushernan with some worry. He suspected that this old man had brainwashed Zhang Feng. He asked, "Tell me about it. As long as we don't go overboard, we can still talk about it." Yushernan smiled and looked around. He said, "Actually, we are a little too conservative. After going up the mountain, look at this place. Is there anything that we have seen before? Or is there something familiar? So, we should learn from that kid. Since these people want to make things difficult for us now, right? Then why don't we be more high profile?" Chapter 991. After all, Niu Jinda's men were not qualified to enter the imperial palace. Compared to entering Shao Mountain, it was much easier. At this time, Niu Jinda's men finally waited for Zhang Sun Wuji at the entrance of the imperial palace with great difficulty. At this time, it was already 4:45 in the afternoon. Zhang Sun Wuji naturally knew Niu Jinda's men. As soon as they met, Zhang Sun Wuji waved his hand and turned back, leading the man into the imperial palace in a hurry. As soon as they entered the imperial palace, Zhang Sun Wuji took the opportunity to ask while waiting on the Vermilion Bird Bridge, "Are you here with news of the mid-autumn hunt?" When the guard heard this, he hurriedly said, replying to Minister Zhao, "This time I'm here with 2 pieces of news. One is about the Wang clan and the coal mine. The other is about the mid-autumn hunt." Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji could also understand the importance of this and did not say anything more. He knew that this was not a good place to talk. He just wanted to prepare in advance. He had a hunch that Niu Jinda's men would come. It seemed to be related to the coal mine. However, he did not expect that it was related to the Wang clan's men. This made things difficult. As for Zhang Feng, the people in the imperial palace were not worried about that kid at all. As long as his brother did not harm others, they would be grateful. Hoping that others would harm him. It depended on who that person was. Just the people from the Imperial College in Hongwenguan alone, if it was not that Zhang Sun Wuji looked down on them, they were not even qualified to carry Zhang Feng's shoes. This was the truth. Zhang Sun Wuji did not favor anyone. The 2 of them waited for almost an hour again. The commander of the Jinwu guards rode a big horse and personally came to escort the 2 of them into Taiji Palace. In the imperial study, Li Shimin and Li Yuan also seemed to be discussing something. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Let's talk first. How did the Erpi Gully coal mine get involved with the Wang family? I remember hearing that the Wang family hasn't been to Erpi Gully for a long time. Is it because there's a member of the Wang family among you?" Li Shimin looked at Li Shimin and said. The guard was so scared that his whole body trembled. This was the first time he had seen the emperor at such a close distance. Although it was enough for him to brag about it for the rest of his life, the might of the emperor still made him somewhat afraid to breathe. "Your Majesty, this is what happened this time. We were ordered to go to Erpi Ridge. As soon as we arrived, General Niu had already sent people to buy the entire Erpi Valley, including a large piece of land in Erpi Ridge. He also announced to the public that General Niu was going to build a residence there and retire there." Li Shimin frowned slightly. If that's the case, shouldn't it have attracted the Wang clan's people? Or should I say, the coal mine here has already alarmed the Wang clan. Li Shimon's heart could not help but sink slightly. Could it be that the Lantian county government, which was the closest to Chang'an, was also the Wang clan's people? Just as Li Shimon was about to let Xiao Gizi investigate this Lantian county government, the guard said again, "Your Majesty, this matter may also be related to Prince Zhang." When the guard said this, Li Shimon and Li Yuan looked at each other and asked almost at the same time, "Speak quickly." Zhang Feng's matter was quite complicated. This time, someone was obviously targeting him. As for changing the target, Li Shimon and Li Yuan, as well as the Guogong, were still having headaches. No one knew who was targeting Zhang Feng. At this time, hearing the guard's words, who were Li Shimon and Li Yuan? They thought of something in an instant. The guard hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, a few days ago, on the second day after General Niu took down Erpi Ling, the Wang clan's people came up the mountain." General Niu also thought that these people came because of the coal mine, but today, after a secret meeting with Prince Zhang at the foot of the mountain, he learned that all of this seemed to be related to Prince Zhang's mid-autumn hunt. Hearing this, Li Shimon and Li Yuan could not help but be shocked. Was this mid-autumn hunt so difficult? The duo's countenances suddenly turned grim. Li Shimon waved his hand and said, "Are you sure what you said is true?" "It's true. I heard it with my own ears." Hearing this, Li Shimon's face suddenly changed. "Come in." Little Gizi, who was guarding outside the door, hurriedly entered the imperial study. Li Shimon said with a gloomy face, "Pass down my order. Immediately investigate all the properties of the Taiyuan Wang clan in Chang'an City. Knock on those who should be knocked on, and spread the news that the retired emperor is a guest on the mountain. If anyone doesn't know what's good for them, feel free to come." Little Gizi and the guard kneeling on the ground were instantly shocked. Was the emperor preparing to attack the Taiyuan Wang clan? Was the emperor really ready to go to war with those aristocratic families? Little Gizi did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly went to the Ministry of Internal Servants to draft a secret edict. At this time, Li Shimon said, "Did Zhang Feng say what to do about this?" "Prince Zhang said to let me and others go to the smelting workshop of White Deer College to get 100 Mitsubishi bayonets. At this time, they should have gone up the mountain." Chapter 992. After sending the person away, Li Shimon paced back and forth in the imperial study for a long time before saying, "Father, what do you think Fengzi means by doing this?" Li Yuan smiled as he smoked his cigarette. He said faintly, "You've been with that kid for such a long time. Can't you see that this kid is someone who can be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force? This time, he might really be angry. These people have touched his bottom line. If it were you and me, what do you think would happen?" Li Yuan said so. Li Shimon was silent. In his eyes, Zhang Feng had always been a lazy and carefree person who had nothing to do. He had always been careless about many things. This was also one of the reasons why Zhang Feng could attract people. However, this kid was extremely sinister. Once someone offended him, or someone he didn't like, they would be in big trouble. Just like what was written in a handwritten letter from Niu Jinda on Li Shimon's desk. This kid turned the mid-autumn hunt into his storytelling in a tea house. Not only did he not let these two people laugh at him, but he also made White Deer College famous. What was this? This was simply a godlike operation. Everyone has been misled by this kid's appearance. Although this kid is not a good person, he is not a bad person either. He just wants to live the life he wants to live. However, these people are always thinking of ways to annoy him and mess with him. You think even a rabbit will bite when it's anxious. What do you think this kid will do when he's anxious? This, Li Shimon couldn't help but be at a loss for words. From the current situation, this kid was really angry. From the fairy cream incident to using the mid-autumn hunt and the environment of Erpy Ridge, he wanted to kill Zhang Feng there. These people's intentions were simply terrible. Li Shimin gave several orders in succession. All the orders were directed at the three core departments of the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the Imperial College in Hongwenguan. Li Shimin had long wanted to move these departments. However, he had never had the opportunity, time, and capital to contend with these aristocratic families. But now, due to the emergence of the cooperative and the opening of the waterway trade, as well as the Mitsubishi bayonet and the gun that Zhang Feng made at this time, Li Shimin wanted to completely concentrate all the power in his hands, as Zhang Feng said. And now, Zhang Feng was preparing to do this at this time, which also gave Li Shimin an opportunity. Erlang, you have to think clearly. Once you fight with the 5 surnames and 7 Wang and the Guanlong aristocratic family, it will inevitably cause the people in Shandong will react. Are you sure you can deal with it? With the current situation in the Tang Dynasty? This, Li Shimin couldn't help but hesitate. Li Yuan was right. These aristocratic families were basically of the same breadth and branch. If there was only one person in the East, it could almost be said to be fighting against these aristocratic families at the same time. If these aristocratic families took any action, it would be a big earthquake for the Tang Dynasty. In addition, the Tang Dynasty's periphery was unstable at this time. If such a thing happened at this time, what would happen? Li Shimin couldn't help but be silent. At this time, seeing Li Shimin like this, Li Yuan sighed and said, "In fact, all this is not your fault. This is the cancer deposited by the previous dynasty. I think if you want to do it, you should start with the imperial court. After all, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the Ministry of Works are the important core of the Tang Dynasty. These people hit a little deeply before, so we couldn't do anything. But now that these people have jumped out, we have a reason to get rid of these arrogant guys." In fact, Li Yuan was very clear about the reason why the Sui dynasty fell and why the Tang Dynasty could rise so quickly. It was that night in Taiyuan when he had a talk with the Guanlong 8 great families, as well as the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, which made the Li family of Longxi recognize his identity, and thus laid the foundation for the Li Tang Dynasty. However, to get rid of the restraint of these aristocratic families, Li Yuan had been working hard all the time. However, after the last incident, Li Yuan gradually distanced himself from the imperial court. But at this time, he really saw hope. The reason why he reconciled with Li Shimin was that he saw in Zhang Feng the shadow of getting rid of these aristocratic families and making the Tang Dynasty truly glorious. Therefore, at this time, Li Yuan's heart, which had long been extinguished, was burning again. The imperial study was completely silent. As time went by, slowly, the setting sun had long been hidden in the mountains of Qinling. A bright moon, which had not been seen for a long time, hung high in the sky of the imperial palace, like a lantern. Under the cover of the night, the lights in the imperial study flickered as people discussed something in low voices. Outside the imperial study, although it was already night, the night sky was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, looking down at the busy figures on the ground with a ferocious expression. Chapter 993. The next morning. In the sky, it started to drizzle again. The temperature in the air suddenly dropped. At this time, it seemed to be telling everyone that the majesty of autumn was inviolable. The grassland on Pyrolite Mountain was wet. Before dawn, a group of students and craftsmen in the mountain were running around Pyrolite Mountain while chanting songs that could shake the entire heaven realm. On Shao Mountain, there was also a group of students wearing undershirts. They were sweating on the basketball court that was built on the thatched beach between the teaching building and the dormitory building. At this time, there was no longer the appearance of the thatched beach. Instead, there were more than 10 or 20 basketball courts of various sizes. At this time, on the basketball court, Yu Shernan and others were taking the lead and hitting the basketball on the court. Their movements were simply unsightly. The students who were watching by the side burst into exclamations from time to time. At this moment, Sun Simiao grabbed Chu Sueliang's beard and snatched the basketball from his hand. Then, he smugly ran straight into a student. That student had long been scared speechless by their godly actions. Seeing Sun Simiao coming, how could he dare to block it? He hurriedly stepped aside and made a gesture of invitation. At this time, fortunately, Zhang Feng was not here. Otherwise, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. A ball hit the backboard. The force that the hardest sandalwood could counterbalance still made the backboard burst into painful groans. "How is it, Brother Bashi? I told you to practice the 5 animal frolics technique with old man, but you didn't want to. Now you know that your physical strength can't keep up, right?" Sun Simiao wiped the sweat on his face and sat on the side of the basketball court, panting, drinking hot tea. The remaining 4 old men played again. They seemed to feel that playing with this group of students was not fun, so they resentfully gave up the basketball court. Sitting on the side of the basketball court, Chu Sueliang shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I have to admit that I'm old. It hasn't been a quarter of an hour, and I'm so tired that I can't stand straight. Tomorrow, you have to prescribe me a good tonic to nourish my body." Sun Simiao glanced at Chu Sueliang's terrifying belly and his eyelids twitched. "Old man, I feel that Feng Zi's method is really suitable for you." "How so?" Chu Sueliang asked while panting. "Don't tell me that what this kid said about prolonging one's life is true. This thing can fool others, but we are not old fools." Sun Simiao was stunned. But it all seemed to be true. That thing was really something. However, Sun Simiao still shook his head and said, "You're wrong. This thing is indeed good for your health, especially for someone like you. You're so fat and you don't have much exercise." If you know what's good for you this time, in 3 years, White Deer College will make an exception and invite you up the mountain. I think you are all smart people and will know what to choose, right? Choose. Choose your ass. You even took out the Crown Prince's jade pendant. Do we have a choice? If they had known that the rumors were true, Lao Tzu wouldn't have participated in this mid-autumn hunt. The students of Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan couldn't help but burst into discussions. Then someone said, "Young Master Qin, my surname is Ji and my name is Huanxiang. My courtesy name is Anka. My surname is Ko and my name is Yuxiang." As the students revealed their names one by one, they said shamelessly, "I hope young Master Qin can put in a few good words for us in front of President Zhang. When the time comes, we will do whatever you ask us to do." How about it? They were on the right track. Cheng Chumo glanced at Li Qingqian and waved his hand. Then, he waved his hand smugly. "I'm tired. This hunt, I understand. How can we let young Master Qin and young Master Li do such a vulgar thing? Let's go hunting now, let's go." Cheng Chumo sighed and said, "But Lao Tzu is afraid that someone will complain. What should we do? Our dean doesn't know anything about this." When everyone heard this, the young man surnamed Ku's face immediately turned serious. He waved the dagger in his hand and said, "Everyone should know about Dean Zhangfeng's capabilities. I'm sure you have yearned for young Master Zhangfeng's toast to the gods for a long time, right? That's why we are taking action. Those who go, stand here. Those who don't, you know the consequences." His words were full of threats. This made the young man from the Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan a little scared. But in the face of power, everyone could only submit. Then, the group of people rushed into the forest as if they had gone mad, looking for prey. When everyone was far away, Qing Chumo sat on the ground and smiled at Li Qingqian. How was it? Isn't this settled? I told you that this group of people was born in the year of the mule. We had to teach them a lesson. Li Qingqian looked at Qing Chumo and said worriedly, I don't know if what you did was right. I hope Feng Zi doesn't know about this. Ma Zhou, Hao Qujun, Lai Ji, and the others were like fossils in the wind. They were in a state of confusion from the beginning until now. Who am I? Where am I? What the hell am I doing? What did I just see? Every time they went hunting, Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji would follow. Li Yuanji even often said to others, I'd rather not eat for 3 days than not hunt for a day. Therefore, after the incident at the Xuanwu Gate, Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji's hobby of hunting became strong evidence of their absurdity. However, criticism was one thing. After Li Shimin ascended the throne, there would still be time for hunting. Moreover, Li Shimin felt that this small-scale hunting was not enough, so the scale began to become bigger and bigger. Hunting was even included in the assessment of the academy every year. It was said that only hunters could show their intelligence and wisdom. With the excited shouts, Qing Chumo and others looked at Li Qingqian. Finally, they gritted their teeth, picked up their weapons, and joined the hunting team. Seeing this, after a slight hesitation, Li Qingqian also stood up, adjusted his state of mind, raised his arms and shouted, Wait for me. After Li Qingqian approached, Qing Chumo said half-jokingly, What, have you thought it through? Li Qingqian blushed and glared at Qing Chumo. Feng Zi is right. We have to rely on ourselves for everything. Let's go. I don't believe that with our ability, we can't beat them. Hearing this, only then did Qing Chumo and the others burst into laughter. They knew that the knot in Li Qingqian's heart had not been untied. This was a long road. However, if he could understand this point, it proved that he had not stayed in Shao Mountain for so long in vain. Ma Zhou and others still followed behind them with a confused look. They did not know whether it was because the topic was too high-end or because the name of the 4 demon kings had shocked them. However, at this time, these stubborn people of Chang and all gathered together, which was a rare grand occasion. Li Qingqian waved the dagger in his hand, like a small general in a white robe, rushing in the front. The group of stubborn people behind him also followed Li Qingqian into the jungle with strange cries. Those students who were originally surrounding a wild boar suddenly saw Qing Chumo and others rushing over with murderous intent. They hurriedly abandoned the target and scattered like birds and beasts. Li Qingqian excitedly rolled up his sleeves and said, Don't move. Watch carefully how I tame this wild boar. When Qing Chumo and others heard this, their faces could not help but change. They said with some hesitation, How about I go? Qing Chumo did not even look at Qing Chumo. He waved the dagger in his hand and rushed into the jungle. However, in the quiet jungle, after Li Qingqian's angry roar, Li Qingqian walked out of the jungle with his clothes in a mess. His expression did not change as he threw the dagger in his hand to Qing Chumo and said, I'm going to rest for a while. This wild boar spirit is yours. Chapter 996. On the other hand, Zhang Feng had nothing to do. He directly occupied the outpost where he saw Niu Jinda and used it as a temporary resting place. And this beach was also a good place to fish. In less than 2 hours, Zhang Feng caught almost a dozen fish, and these fish were mainly wild grass carps. Although there were many carps, Zhang Feng often ate them. But at this time, if he caught carps and gave these people a reason to criticize him, it would be a little bad. After all, The current emperor had gone crazy and issued an edict that people were not allowed to eat carps, saying that it was a rebellion against the Li family. This made Zhang Feng, who had always liked to eat carps, want to curse. Carps were the best food for picnics. But at this time, because of this matter, Zhang Feng could only endure it. After secretly sharing 2 big carps with his children, he hurriedly took a dozen big grass carps back, ready to win people's hearts and humiliate the dean of the Imperial College. As the dean, Lao Tzu took the lead. "Damn, you only know how to sit and eat ready-made food." When Zhang Feng took the 2 girls back to the camp, he bumped into Qing Yaojin and an unfamiliar old man who exuded an air of nobility. The moment she saw the old man, Jingshu's face changed slightly. She trembled slightly. Zhang Feng didn't take it seriously. The old man was wearing a yellow robe with a dragon embroidered on it. His hair and beard were slightly gray, but the mustache around his lips was well trimmed. Zhang Feng almost wanted to touch the mustache to see if it was fake. Qing Yaojin saw Zhang Feng and immediately laughed. "Ha ha ha, come, brother Xiaogong, let me introduce you. This is Lao Li's most proud business partner, the youngest viscount of the Tang Dynasty, and the dean and chancellor of Chang and University and White Deer College, Zhang Feng." "Oh right, these 2 are his wives." Li Xiaogong's eyes narrowed slightly. He stroked his beard and looked at Zhang Feng. No one knew what he was thinking. Qing Yaojin pulled Zhang Feng aside and said, "Feng Zi, come, this is a person with a great background. He is a prince and the minister of the Board of Rites." When Zhang Feng heard this, he thought to himself, as expected. This Li Xiaogong was quite a character. Although he was a noble prince, to be able to rely on his own ability to forcefully obtain the second position of the Lingyan Pavilion, it could be seen how high this person's political and military skills were. Behind him, several people dressed in bodyguard uniforms were all looking at Zhang Feng with incomparably sharp eyes. Behind this group of bodyguards were the 3 old guys from the Board of Rites and the Board of Works. They bowed and licked Zhang Feng's lips as they winked at him. Zhang Feng laughed and swung the rattan hanging around his neck. He stretched out his hand and said, "Hello, Lord Li. It's an honor to meet you." As long as the Tang dynasty is strong and prosperous, even if I have to sacrifice my life, okay, this official knows. Li Xiaogong was somewhat speechless and interrupted Zhang Feng. He had long heard that this kid's eloquence was outstanding, but now it seemed, it was really frightening. Chapter 997. This time, it was mainly because he was curious about Zhang Feng. Last night, the emperor urgently summoned him to the palace to talk about this matter. Li Xiaogong was ready to see who this guy that the emperor and the retired emperor missed so much was. So he asked his good friend Qing Yaojin to set up a trap to test him. Li Xiaogong really admired Zhang Feng for what he had done before. But when he learned that Zhang Feng had such achievements in military affairs, he couldn't help but be shocked by Zhang Feng. But it was better to hear about him than to meet him. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng's improper behavior, Li Xiaogong was a little angry. As the chancellor of the academy and a viscount, he actually hung such a dirty thing around his neck and didn't even take it off when he saw him. This matter was, Fengzi. Qing Yaojin walked to the 2 people secretly and whispered to Zhang Feng, pointing at his neck. Zhang Feng suddenly realized and patted his head, saying, "Oh right, I almost forgot. Old Qin, what time is it now?" Qing Yaojin was a little speechless. After a long time, he said, "It's the last quarter. It's the last quarter. Lord Li, you haven't eaten yet, right? Come, this is what I just got from hunting. As the dean, I think I have to take the lead, so I brought my family to the river to hunt more than 10 fish." Now I'll cook it for you to satisfy your craving. How about it? Qing Yaojin's face was a little embarrassed. Was this what he meant? I'm telling you to throw away all the things on your neck. Why were you so silly? The smiles on the faces of the people from the Ministry of Works became wider, and some even couldn't help it. Li Xiaogong was made to laugh by Zhang Feng's act. Now that you mention it, I do feel a little hungry. I heard that your cooking skills are good. Old Li has also opened many restaurants in Chang'an. Although the names are a little unpleasant to hear, the food there is really a unique flavor. Well, you can cook it and let me have a taste. Zhang Feng seriously suspected that Lao Li was Li Xiaogong's relative. But when he thought about it carefully, the history records were still a little vague about Li Xiaogong's relatives, so he couldn't help but be a little suspicious. But now that Li Xiaogong said so, he didn't care about it and pulled the two girls to go to a small ditch. Until now. Li Xiaogong glanced at the people behind him and snorted coldly. The purpose of the mid-autumn hunt is to take the lead. Look at Zhang Feng, how old is he? He's the dean of 2 academies and has so many achievements, but he's not arrogant because of his talent. Look at all of you, what are you doing? I'm looking at the 17 fish hanging around Zhang Feng's neck. After today's hunt, each of you must hand over 10 fish to me. If you can't do it, you can resign yourselves. When they heard this, their faces suddenly changed. They didn't dare to say anything. Chapter 998. Afternoons always flew by quickly. Unknowingly, the sun had already slowly hung on the western horizon. At this time, Li Xiaogong, with a face full of shock, sat down on a stool in the middle of the camp in the valley with the help of Qing Yaojin. Qing Yaojin said speechlessly, "The sun has already set. Why haven't these little bastards come back yet? Could it be that something happened?" Without waiting for him to finish, Qing Yaojin heard the rustling of footsteps not far away. The first thing that came into view was Qing Chumo and the others. Although Qing Chumo and the others' clothes were tattered, and many of them even had wounds on their bodies, Li Qingqian's face had been cut by something unknown. At this time, the blood had already dried, and the wound didn't seem to be deep. And on their shoulders, they were all carrying prey big and small. Qing Chumo carried 2 wild boars on his shoulders, and Li Qingqian carried a wolf on his back. Although he was the most embarrassed at this time, it could be seen that he was really excited at this time. Seeing that Li Qingqian was fine and had even hunted a wolf, Li Xiaogong and Qing Yaojin were really greatly shocked. Qing Yaojin then hurried to the riverside and called Zhang Feng and the other 2 who were leisurely enjoying themselves. Jing Shu, Zhang Yuyao, and Zhang Feng were sent to the barracks. It was better not to let them see these things, lest they feel uncomfortable at night. With 2 beautiful women lying beside them, it was already quite a test of a person's endurance. In addition, if they were frightened now, then Zhang Feng would have to suffer at night. When Zhang Feng arrived, Li Qingqian and the others were shocked and stood valiantly in the field of Camp D. Zhang Feng was also shocked by everyone's prey. When Zhang Feng walked in, Li Xiaogong patted the stool next to him and said, "Brother Zhang, come, sit here. I'll introduce you to a few great talents later." Zhang Feng was a little speechless. Didn't you just give some pointers on the marching battle formation? Now you're not leading the troops. Why do you always want to pester Lao Tzu? If you weren't the boss of the Ministry of Personnel, Lao Tzu wouldn't bother with you. But at this time, Zhang Feng could only admit defeat. He laughed dryly and sat beside Li Xiaogong. When Li Qingqian and the others saw how close Zhang Feng and Li Xiaogong were, they all gaped and looked at Zhang Feng with a stunned face. Mother **Ker, what happened today? Why was Li Xiaogong, commonly known as the King of Hell, bought over by Zhang Feng in just one afternoon? What the ***ck? What's going on? Li Xiaogong didn't care about everyone's gazes. He pointed at the people from White Deer College in Chang, an academy, and said, "These people are not bad. Look at that guy who's as thin as a chicken, but he actually hunted a wolf. His courage is commendable. Not bad, not bad." As a student, you can use your wits to hunt a wolf without hurting yourself. 3 years later, I'll guarantee your promotion. Li Xiaogong pretended not to know Li Qingqian and pretended to praise him. However, Li Xiaogong was really surprised by Li Qingqian. He was usually gentle and weak. He didn't expect him to have such explosive power. Zhang Feng chuckled and said, "Lord Li, this person is Li Qingqian. He's Lao Li's son." Li Xiaogong pretended to be shocked. "What? He's Lao Li's son? My goodness, not bad, not bad." 3 years later, it seems like Lao Li's family will be able to embark on an official career. Ha ha ha. As he spoke, Li Xiaogong pointed at Fang Yai and said, "This guy is not bad either. Look, he actually hunted 2 badgers. Old man knows about badgers. They're especially hard to catch. According to old man's knowledge, badgers are extremely rare around Chang'an. Not bad, not bad. His luck is not bad. This seems to be your second son, old He." Ching Chumo was waiting expectantly, but when he heard Li Xiaogong's words, his face instantly darkened. Li Qingqian and the others tried their best to hold back their laughter. Ching Yaojin didn't care. He laughed and said, "That's right, it's my son." Li Xiaogong nodded. "Not bad. You old brat, you finally have a successor." After Li Xiaogong personally inspected the stalls, the people from the Imperial College in Hongwenguan came running back. They originally thought that these stubborn people would suddenly go crazy and ask them to help hunt. They thought that their future was hopeless. However, they didn't know why this group of people went crazy and actually went to hunt. Moreover, they were the kind that didn't care about their lives. This couldn't help but arouse everyone's passion. However, they were still a step too late. Looking at the pheasants, frogs, mice, and other animals in their hands, and then looking at the other people's prey, was there even a need to compete? Moreover, it was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, the current imperial prince, who had personally come to inspect. Li Xiaogong also suddenly became interested. He stood up and walked slowly with Qing Yaojin and Zhang Feng while admiring the items in everyone's hands. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. However, after the results of Chang and University and Secretary Bailu were inspected, Li Xiaogong looked at the prey of the students from the Imperial College in Hongwenguan who had been standing there for a long time. However, in an instant, Li Xiaogong angrily flung his sleeves and left. Chapter 999. Early the next morning, Zhang Feng was woken up by the earth-shattering sounds of training. He quickly put on his clothes and went to the entrance of the tent. He saw Ching Chumo standing outside Zhang Feng's tent, holding a bamboo pole like a javelin. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. "When did you come?" Reporting to the dean. "Last night, when we were returning to defend. F***CKU. Don't you know that the dean's wife is also inside? Get out of my way, you brat." Zhang Feng was furious. Originally, he thought that this brat was tactful. However, at this moment, when he thought of how the dream of the Red Chamber, that he talked about with Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao last night might have been leaked, he couldn't help but feel angry. This was still a small matter. What Zhang Feng hated the most was eavesdropping. Ching Chumo instantly deflated. "Don't get angry. When I arrived, it was already the latter half of the night. Other than your snoring, there was no other business. Furthermore, I was only 10 steps away from your living quarters. I couldn't hear anything. Zhao Yu's face turned into a mischievous grin as he spoke. You didn't hear anything. How did you know that Lao Tzu snored? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. However, he also knew that this was an unusual time. Old Chen arranged for him to come was nothing more than to ensure his safety. Zhang Feng was really touched. Have you eaten? Qing Chumo shook his head and rubbed his stomach. I had nothing to do last night, so I secretly roasted 3 pheasants. Now that you didn't mention it, I'm really hungry. What are we eating today? At the mention of food, Qing Chumo's eyes instantly turned into crescents. He hooked his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and refused to let go. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. We're outside. You'd better know your limits. When Qing Chumo heard this, he immediately gave a military salute that Zhang Feng had instructed them to do before. Yes, sir. Zhang Feng shook his head speechlessly. He placed the right hand that was raised above his head between his eyebrows and said, Let's go. Yes. The loud roar gave Zhang Feng a big fright. Lower your voice. Zhang Feng stomped his feet. Don't scream like a ghost every day. It hurts my eardrums. Yes. This time, Qing Chumo's voice was much softer. This idiot. In the end, Chen Tianyi still hasn't seen much of the world. Zhang Feng sighed in his heart. Chen Tianyi had met the right person to meet him. This brother's perspective was too big. Previously, this guy was a little stubborn with a mouth full of nonsense, but now... Zhang Feng was planning to bring him step by step to the upper class. For example, a big shot like Li Shaogong. In the distance, Li Shaogong, Qing Yaojin, and everyone else who was still half asleep were staring at the students of White Deer College in Chang and University who were doing their morning exercises. There was a lot of discussion. There were even people who were pointing at them and commenting. Li Qingqian naturally became the leader of these people. He stuck his butt out, shouted loud slogans, and put in his best performance. At this time, his forehead was already dripping with sweat. Zhang Feng's arrival made Li Shaogong very happy. He laughed and said, President Zhang, you're really a talent who can surprise me all the time. Zhang Feng didn't dare to say that. He waved his hand and said, You're too kind. This is what a student should do. These things are insignificant. Flattery wasn't something that could be worn all the time. For example, at this time, the 3 old guys from the Ministry of Works and Rights, as well as the 2 old guys from the Imperial College in Hongwenguan, looked at Zhang Feng's eyes as if they wanted to poke Zhang Feng out. Zhang Feng pretended not to see the 5 people's gazes. He smiled and said, I'm sorry to disturb Lord Li. These students of mine can't sleep in the morning, so I thought about it and evolved a simple exercise method from the 5 animal frolics. On the one hand, when they wake up in the morning, they can relax their muscles and improve their memory. After the strenuous exercise, they can eat. It's good for the healthy development of the body. Li Shaogong stroked his beard and said with a smile, Is this some medicine from your academy? Yes, yes, yes. This is it. I didn't expect Lord Li to know this. It's really an honor. Li Shaogong glared at Zhang Feng. Don't flatter me. You'd better explain it to the old man later. Otherwise, getting a flogging is a light punishment. Disqualifying you from this hunt is also a light punishment. Zhang Feng was like a monk. He was a little confused. What the hell was going on? Wasn't everything fine just now? What was wrong with him this time? However, at this time, Li Shaogong didn't pay attention to Zhang Feng. Instead, he shook his head and stared at Li Qingqian and the others doing 5 rounds of morning exercises. Then, he said with some dissatisfaction, Lord Qian, Lord He. Hearing this, the two old men from the Ministry of Personnel Affairs and the Ministry of Works hurried forward and bowed beside Li Xiaogong. Li Xiaogong pointed at the field and asked with a smile, "Is there still a need to compete?" This, the two couldn't help but feel awkward. "Sir, this is the rules set by His Majesty. Although the overall performance of the students from White Deer College in Chang and University is very good, we still think that we should do things according to the rules." Li Xiaogong looked at the two meaningfully, then nodded and said, "Since that's the case, this official announces that the debate that was supposed to last 3 days will be changed to 1 day. Today's debate is both the beginning and the end. Everyone will proceed with the debate under this official's witness. What do the three of you think? Do I, Li Xiaogong, have the right to do so?" He smiled and waved his hand, "Since Principal Sun has said so, and this official has also considered this matter, then how about we use the appraisal of poems as a gimmick? Wouldn't that be fair? Moreover, you should have been immersed in this for more than 30 years. Are you afraid of a young boy in his early 20s? Old man does not believe that this boy can recite poetry in 7 steps like Chao Ji." Chapter 1001. Li Xiaogong was right. Even if he started learning poetry when he was in his mother's womb, he only had 20 years. Throwing out the first 3 years, and removing the 3 years of literacy, he only had 14 years. What could he do in these 14 years? How many books could he read? How many ancient books could he read? As for the rumor that he could compose 100 poems in one night, it seemed that the emperor didn't believe it and wanted to expose this person's conspiracy. So, after all, those poems were just rumors. No one knew if this kid had actually created them in a single night. Everyone thought about it and they couldn't help but feel a little excited. Lord He from the Ministry of Works gathered his courage and stepped forward. He cupped his fist and bowed, "Since Lord Li has said so, we can only respect him. But for the sake of fairness, old man thinks that the quality of the poems should be the most important. What do you think?" Zhang Feng smiled. He didn't know what Li Xiaogong was up to, but after listening to Zhang Feng, he realized something. Lao Li's means were really something. Not only did he call the 4 great scholars brothers, but he could also invite the Duke of the Imperial Court. He was also the second person in the Lingyan Pavilion. At this time, he heard Li Xiaogong say that the emperor sent him here because of this. What kind of means did Lao Li have? Could it be that the poem he recited after that night of drunkenness had reached the emperor's hands? The more Zhang Feng thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. Otherwise, why were there only a few scattered poems in the market? There were no more than 10 poems in total. This was really inexplicable. If it was an ordinary businessman, this kind of thing would bring glory to the family no matter how much they treasured it. Even if they wanted to hide it, it couldn't be hidden. However, Lao Li actually kept it a secret. Moreover, it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. After thinking about it, Zhang Feng was surprised to find that he didn't know which street or market Lao Li lived in Chang and City. Just as Zhang Feng's imagination was running wild. Everyone had finalized this matter. Li Xiaogong held his stomach and looked at Zhang Feng meaningfully. He asked, "President Zhang, what do you think of this arrangement?" Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but he also knew that this was helping him. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Just listen to Lord Li. I will definitely obey." "That's good. In that case, come." Li Xiaogong waved his hand faintly. In an instant, several servants hurried forward and knelt in front of Li Xiaogong. Li Xiaogong ordered faintly, "Prepare the banquet and music." After that, Li Xiaogong took the lead and went in another direction. Qing Yaojin looked at Zhang Feng and winked. His meaning was self-evident. Zhang Feng couldn't help but laugh in surprise. Chapter 1002. They were all people with self-restraint. After glancing at Zhang Feng, they withdrew their gazes again. It was the first time that a banquet was held in the river. If it were any other time, they would really want to take off their shoes and socks like Zhang Feng. It would be comfortable, but they didn't dare to do so. They wanted to save face. When Li Xiaogong saw that they were seated, he looked at Jing Shu, who was beside Zhang Feng, and nodded slightly. I've long heard that Miss Jingshu's zither skills are extraordinary. Would you do me the honor of joining us today? After all, Jingshu was a woman who had seen grand occasions. She stood up and bowed slightly to Li Xiaogong. She said that she was flattered and then remained silent. When Zhang Feng saw this, he touched Jingshu's small hand slightly. Jingshu nodded and walked in the direction of the zither. This scene made Li Xiaogong and Qing Yaojin look at each other and then laugh. Jingshu pretended not to hear them and walked straight to the zither. The two maids beside the zither saw Jingshu take her seat and gently waved their round fans. They looked so beautiful and set off Jingshu's otherworldly aura. After the zither sounded, Li Xiaogong looked at everyone indifferently. In that case, let's start today. Prince Zhang. After Li Xiaogong sat down, he raised his cup. Zhang Feng thought that Li Xiaogong wanted to drink with him. He hurriedly raised his cup, only to find that Li Xiaogong had already put the cup on the table and seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. Zhang Feng was slightly stunned. He saw that the two people opposite him, as well as the three people from the Ministry of Works and Rights, were covering their mouths and snickering. Qing Yaojin coughed and made a gesture of reciting a poem. Zhang Feng was speechless. Damn it. Let Lao Tzu compose a poem. You're a man with a military background. Why are you pretending to be noble and virtuous here? Seeing this, Zhang Feng was slightly unhappy. He lazily clasped his hands to Li Xiaogong. In reply to Lord Li, I only know some sour sentences. How dare I embarrass myself in front of Lord Li and the two presidents? As soon as these words came out, several people instantly looked at Li Xiaogong. Only then did they understand that they wanted to give this guy a chance to stand out. Did they want to use their hands to help Zhang Feng? Did they want to use their hands to prove Zhang Feng's reputation? They were not fools. Of course, they knew that on the 15th of August, on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Zhang Feng would become a great Confucian scholar at the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. This poetry meet was organized by the 4 great Confucian scholars for Zhang Feng. If this guy could become famous at the poetry meet, his reputation as a great Confucian would be confirmed. This was something that no one wanted to see. Chapter 1003. Today, Zhang Feng's mental state was very poor. The two women did not know where they heard that after drinking, he would talk a lot, and would answer any question you asked. Last night, the two women pestered Zhang Feng to talk about the Red Chamber, but Zhang Feng was really unwilling to talk about it. After all, that thing consumed too much energy, and now he had something important to do. The two women were also clever, and directly got Zhang Feng drunk. It was unknown which big mouth told the two women this trick. After getting drunk, Zhang Feng's poetic way of passing the time, in one breath, he talked from Su Shi to dawn. If it were not for the severe headache and swelling in his head, coupled with the fact that he really could not hold in his urine, Zhang Feng might still be lying on the bed at this time. Until now, Zhang Feng's head was still somewhat groggy. At this time, the warm water from the soles of his feet washed the soft sand, flowing between the soles of his feet. A burst of comfortable and numb feeling made Zhang Feng somewhat drowsy. In order to not be sleepy here, Zhang Yuyao reluctantly picked up the wine that Zhang Yuyao poured for him, and drank it to the brim. He smacked his lips and frowned. Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the others all knew some of Zhang Feng's methods. At this time, they were all looking at Zhang Feng, frowning, and silently calculating for him. About the time it took to brew a cup of tea. The originally abnormally sleepy Zhang Feng simply laid his whole body in the river, allowing the river water to flow between his cheeks and hair. He even faintly felt a few small fish slap his cheeks a few times. After a little sober, Zhang Feng sat up and stretched out his hand. Zhang Yuyao was very sensitive to this kind of thing. Changing to a large bowl, he filled it to the brim with wine for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng frowned slightly, but still raised his head and drank the entire bowl. Closing his eyes for a moment, he opened his lips slightly and sang with his eyes slightly narrowed, "Wine and song, life is short, like the morning dew, the passing days are bitter, my heart is for you, I sing, until now, I have a guest, the drum and the flute, the moon is clear, when will it retreat, the banquet is full of perseverance, the heart is full of gratitude, the moon and the stars are sparse, the crow flies south, circling the tree 3 times, which branch can lean against the mountain, not tired of the high sea, not tired of the deep sea, the Duke of Zhou's nourishment, the whole world is in my heart." Just like how Zhang Feng pretended to be pretentious with the poem, the moment the poem came out, even the musician who was playing the music stopped playing. As for Jing Shu, she was playing the guzheng passionately along with the poem. The poetic quality of the poem, coupled with the zither music, caused the artistic conception of the poem to explode to the extreme.